I apologize.
If I would have gotten an answer to the email
know.
that explained that,
I-
we
I-
wouldn't be here.
I know. So, and I get you. And her comment, which I really appreciated, saying that monetary fines create a barrier in the library system for its patrons. I was like, I never thought of it that way. And,
I still don't.
well, I mean, but it's something that she said, so I appreciate that. So that was an answer to that part. The answer to the Sunday hours still is bothersome and understandable at the same time. Bothersome that it wasn't discussed where those funds were going to go when they shut down the pilot program of Sunday hours. They absorbed the dollars. It was $120,000, I believe, that was provided to them, operational funds, to provide Sunday hours in the 2 or 3 libraries. Around the same time, Exploration Commons was standing up, and it was told to us that they did not need additional funds to staff Exploration Commons. It's common sense to me, well, if they shut down the Sunday hours, well, where are those people going to go? They're going to go over to Exploration Commons. They're funding and, staffing Exploration Commons with those resources. So comments this morning saying that, additional funds and additional staffing was never provided. It was told to us that they did not need to provide. We did not need to provide. There are, though, other things that we do provide, whether it be the utilities of the library.
Nicely put, we provided Exploration Commons.
We, yeah, along with philanthropic and other, yes. But we provide, the utilities. We provided public works during the process of developing Exploration Commons. So there's definitely secondary, tertiary effects of all of this that say we're funding a lot when it comes to the library. The library, and Ted, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I'm correct, the library, the community college, and the public schools have their own operational reserve, correct? Or reserve
Fund-
or contingent,
fund balance.
fund balance. I said wrong words, fund balance, all 3. When we provide funds and we allocate or execute our dollars to those 3 entities, we then lose our authority over those dollars, and they can use them any way they want. And so my thing is we've answered the questions about the contingencies, or what's contingent, and it's up to them to use their fund balance to match. I don't know why they came to us in such a hard way or tidal wave of saying, put back things from the Tuesday. We never took it away. No dollars were ever taken away. Questions were asked, and now I believe they've been answered. So that's kind of where I'm sitting, and I just want to move on from that after we make a decision, if necessary, to go on to the next topic, like fire EMS and other big-ticket items, like the $1.5 million with the wastewater, not wastewater, the pure water project in Westminster. I mean, these are big tickets that we got to talk about.
Well,
On
and-
taking money away, this might be a good time for a little summary for everybody who's listening. 'Cause I actually had one person come up to me and say, can you explain to me what's happened with the funding? And the answer is, in the plan that we adopted last year, which covered fiscal years 24 through 29, in fiscal year 25, there was a plan for a 3% increase to the library. I want to emphasize, plan. It's not promised, it's not guaranteed at that point. And that would have been $300 and some thousand. I don't remember the exact number. The commissioners, in their proposed budget, so this was not on Tuesday, but this was before we got to Tuesday, the commissioners had first flat funded the library. And I think it's important to point out, it was not the only agency that was flat funded, but then said, we'll put back half of what would have been the increase,
Right.
but only as one-time money. So then when we got to Tuesday, Yes, everybody who has said you took something away on Tuesday is just wrong. That didn't happen.
Right.
What happened on Tuesday, though, was the adding of the idea that we're going to appropriate it, but we're not going to release the money unless these conditions are met.
Right, and I think, with that said, a lot of the conversation that took place between Tuesday and now, we've gotten a lot of the answers, especially when it comes to fines, because I just didn't know that. That was new news to me, how fines and, because the executive director, she shared with me early on that taking away fines actually increased the books going through the library, like they're not, I don't want to say being stolen, but they're.
Circulation.
Circulation, thank you, has increased when the fines went away. Maybe it's because of that, having to buy the book and taking away some of the barriers. So that's kind of what I'm bringing to the table.
And they alluded to April 9 emails. Unfortunately, whoever did the PIA did it, I forget, April 15th. And I actually added an April 19th email to it as some backup. And they saw the April 9th email. They didn't see the meetings since then or the emails since then. And I said, I'd like you to reconsider the fines and explain it to me.
Yeah,
And I'd like you to consider Sundays. I've probably got weaker on the fines, although it's not logical that stopping fines gets books, it's just, none of that's logical, which is okay. But Sundays, we heard today also, oh, you're going to have 5 people there. A couple of our surrounding counties actually said in some of their branches, Sundays are the busiest days. I think we need to look at that hard, and if that takes more one-time money this year to get started, and we talk about what we got to do, I just think it's very foolish not to look at that. And then we did get an agenda today that their board is meeting Tuesday to discuss all this. And beyond the agenda, I haven't gotten an answer from my last email. So I'm still not happy with the lack of response, even if I would have gotten an email, say, the board's meeting and I'll get back to you after that. It's disappointing, but I think if they really meet Tuesday and they talk about it, as long as all this is resolved before July 1st, it doesn't make a bit of difference in their money, because they wouldn't have it until then anyway. So I think it's, and it's typical social media. It was when you see a blog say, that's not true, you need to look at the meeting, it's, I thought maybe some of the blogs would jump on it too, but if I want to be tactful, maybe people just didn't understand. Like Ted said, that, they didn't understand, but I think some of them understood pretty well. They just didn't tell the truth. And that's unfortunate. And again, I want, like you said, I want public comment. I want emails.
Right.
When they're based on untruths, and they're all copied, after 10 or so, you get tired of them. And I did read the history of this at our regular meeting. I'm not,
right.
I think we're done with the library for now.
well, I'd like to see the money without the strings attached, the one-time funds, work with the library as ex officios on the boards, get more, and we agreed to all of this, get more involved in the board selection, and then work with them throughout the year on better communications and processes with the library. But I think I've gotten enough answers on the 2 issues that you brought up, and I've built on those. I mean, just like we talked about cannabis earlier today, I did a lot of try to understand education on the topics. And I think I've gotten, for me, satisfied, for this. Not taking money away and not putting money in. The money's there, but let's just put it there and say, let's move forward, and don't put contingencies on it.
I personally think I can't get an answer to an email with that contingency. So you take that away, I don't know if they're deciding anything Tuesday or not. I think we leave it as is, and we can always, in a month, say, release it.
I know.
But it just,
Maybe it's just a good faith gesture on my part,
I
that's what I
can't
want to
get
do.
an answer to an email as a good faith gesture.
Well, that's not good faith, that's rudeness.
What's that?
That's rudeness and inappropriate, not getting that. But for me,
Well, so I did email the libraries on Wednesday morning, so the day after, and I asked the questions that I said that I was going to stand by about, what about the fines and what happened to the money that was originally appropriated for Sunday hours, and I received the answers to those questions. And then this morning, as Commissioner Rothstein had mentioned, the young woman who was also not the one with the master's degree, but the other one, he talked about what happens to somebody who doesn't return the book, that the book ends up
Right.
as a negative on the account. That seems like that's a worse fine than some kind of fine. So for me, I would have no concern at this point about saying, okay, well, the questions that I had were answered, and I'm okay with removing the contingency for it.
For fines or for Sundays too?
Well, for both, because they're supposed to be, my understanding was that from Tuesday, we were asking about the feasibility of Sundays, not that they were going to do Sundays, that there should be a study about.
And so far, they've told us they're not feasible or not answered. Again, if I got an answer to the email that said what you just said about, what they said today about fines, well, we do charge for the book, we do this, I'd feel better about it.
Right.
I don't know how much to say.
Well, maybe we can ask for an email to be sent to you ASAP.
Last time it was during the meeting, and I'll gladly meet with anybody, I'll gladly talk to anybody. When every county around us has Sundays, but we're implied it isn't feasible to have Sundays, that gives me some doubt. And I just think if we don't do some kind of restriction to make sure at least it gets studied and looked at, and like I say, if it comes back that, well, we can open Eldersburg on Sunday, but we need 50 grand, that's worth talking about, but no answer is no answer. And to refer to an answer that's over a month old that I already said
Yeah.
wasn't acceptable isn't an answer. And giving people emails to put on Facebook isn't an answer. If you got all that time, you can answer an email. I just feel like, again, whatever the majority says, but all I've heard for 2 years is we want to hold people to the fire, we want to make change, we want to do stuff, and then when it comes time to do it, I haven't seen us do it yet.
Well, to all your points, and I think they're all valid for a variety of reasons. Was intrigued to learn a little more about the fine situation. I think that's definitely different than what we all grew up with in a variety of scenarios. I think it does in some ways probably affect you more, to your point, Commissioner Vigliotti, if you're getting fined for actual full books versus 50 cents here, $1 there. And I'm not speaking for anybody else other than just my thoughts when I say this. I would be curious, and I don't know enough about their board, and that's not a negative towards their board, but any board I've ever served on for nonprofits, unless it was an absolute emergency meeting that was done within 24 hours, which I can only think of one, which was due to COVID, we weren't ever meeting in a fast enough schedule to get something else answered to anyone. I'm not making excuses or justifying, I'm just making that comment. So if they're having an emergency meeting, I think it's Tuesday, the earliest we'll probably hear would be Wednesday morning, Tuesday night's my assumption.
Actually, the meeting is tonight,
Is it tonight?
yes,
Okay, I know somebody said.
and it's a virtual meeting.
Okay. And, you know, I think here's the thing. I don't think any of us in this room have anything against the library personally on the bottom end of it. I think if we break it down, it's a huge piece of our community, affects everybody. It's not just books, it's everything from paying your property taxes to notaries to allowing people access to technology and so many other things. I understand your frustration and irritation with your thoughts on a variety of it, I really truly do. And yes, this board has definitely changed some things versus previous boards, without question. We've approached things vastly differently, I think, at times, and that's neither positive nor negative to either of the boards. To me, I feel like we've kind of, to Commissioner Rothstein's point, I feel like we've kind of gotten those answers. I understand your thoughts and
From
ideas.
whom? Who did we get answers
Well,
from?
we heard some of that today, I thought.
So we got answers from taxpayers.
Well, I know at least some of them actually were talking about the whole library systems in general, about fines and such. But I think, and we also, obviously, we got some information about the Sunday situation as well. We had that earlier.
Yeah, they said it wasn't feasible.
But I guess my point and my thought is, I can understand the idea of wanting to have Sunday hours. I agree with you in that we've got it in surrounding counties. I think the question becomes, and yes, it's their funds, they can use those funds for whatever they choose once they receive them. My understanding, if I'm correct, was those funds were to be used towards salaries. And yes, we're looking at giving X percentage to our staff as well. And I'm not letting anybody off the hook here. I don't want anybody to take it that way. But I think, for me, I would rather see us remove the two contingencies, fund them to half that we've talked about, and let's see where this relationship goes. I don't say it's perfect, but, you know, to Commissioner Rothstein's point, I couldn't use better words, good faith. And believe me, I understand your frustration on a variety of things. I'm not by any means ignoring that fact. I just think we're looking at a bigger picture than just the five of us, the library board, or whoever else, and I'm not trying to make that personal. But 6 months from now, if the world hasn't improved, we can definitely revisit it.
We won't do anything then either. I mean, if we're going to cave to infactual emails, lies on Facebook, and non-answers from the director, we might as well just say, do what you want and walk away. And I don't understand, the budget isn't going into effect till July 1st. We have a month and a half to release that money. And we're willing to do it now without them doing anything. And based on, like I say, lies on Facebook and non-responses. Again, you know,
So let me,
I understand, and, but like I say, that's,
so I want to ask a procedural question here. So when we ostensibly wrap up today, we hope to have a budget ready to vote on Tuesday. Do we have to vote on what we produce today to vote on Tuesday? So when we get to Tuesday, if we decide to make a change, can we make a change on Tuesday prior to voting?
Well, with something like this, it's not money. I mean, it's
Well, what-
decision-making.
Right, so what I'm getting at is if we wait to see how the meeting tonight goes, on Tuesday, when we have the final vote for the budget, at that point, it has to be decided here today.
Well, budget peeps can correct me if I'm wrong, but you vote on the budget. The intention is to vote on the budget today. Tuesdays, then they have time to produce the ordinance, because remember, the budget's an ordinance, and then that, is finally adopted on Tuesday, but the ordinance, right? I mean, you wouldn't be able to change it.
but all you're suggesting for Tuesday is we say we pull the restrictions.
Correct.
Correct.
Not a dollar amount change in
Right,
the
well,
budget.
that's,
There's no dollar.
So really, we're not changing the budget.
That's correct.
If that's the case, that may not
That-
matter.
Because
That's
that,
correct.
that seems to me like that's the middle road here, right? I have the answers that I want, but you don't. I know Commissioner Guerin hasn't said anything about this, so if, and feel free to, correct me if I'm wrong, but, so they're having their meeting tonight to talk about these things that you, all right, so if we wait and see what they have to say tonight, we can make up our mind Tuesday about whether to release the contingency on it.
And, or we can do it Thursday, or we could do it the next week, or,
Okay.
we're not tying our hands by leaving it as it is.
So two things. One, I think Roberta did call Ted a marshmallow chicken or something by saying peeps, but I'm not sure if it's yellow or pink or whatever, but anyway. The situation, I want to be very
At least I know how to
clear.
pronounce his last name.
I want to be very clear is that the Board of County Commissioners did not take away the $169,000 that at this point we put in place for the Carroll County Public Libraries. That was a misinformation driven by lots of folks. We have not done that. They can call Commissioner Kyler all the names they want in the book, along with calling them all of us names in the book. Regardless, we did not take collectively that money away. What we did say was, we're putting this money in place. We would like to see the library use their fund balance to match that money one time for FY25, strengthen the relationships that we have moving forward, to then go into an ongoing situation starting FY26. That scenario has not changed. And so all of, like you said, this social media
Yep.
misinformation, okay, that's fine, and I'm good with that, and we'll just leave it as is. So, okay.
So just for a quick point of clarification, so if we were to wrap up today, the actual budget vote would be today, the presentation would be on Tuesday, and technically, if I'm not mistaken, if that were not to happen, not saying it won't, we would have another backup meeting next Thursday on the 23rd, which is still on the calendar, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did you want to,
I might as well say something. Yeah, emails or no emails, I don't feel like those issues are resolved, and it sounds like we have time to do it, and I've told a couple of the library folks already, I'm confident we're going to get to a resolution. I do want to understand more about these fines. I wouldn't mind seeing at least the Westminster Library maybe open for a few hours on Sundays, so hopefully we can get there. I have no interest in publicly financing books that people don't have to return. I mean, it's not a tax-sponsored Amazon we're trying to run here. We've got taxpayer dollars here into those books. So, but again, I'm glad we're just going to take a wait and see. It's a negotiation process. I think that's a fair way to put it. And we've got time. So, yeah. And I'm the one tending their first board meeting. So. I'll let you guys know how it goes.
Since you're talking, you were at ESAC, and you were at our meeting with Chief, and we said we wanted to have more meetings with him to make sure the plan comes together. I've told a couple volunteers that our plan from Tuesday was leave the money in CC Visa as insurance, and put money into EMS so Chief Robinson can do whatever, training, promotions, whatever. His ultimate goal is next year to have all county-paid drivers in EMS. And so none of the companies will need any of their employees. And I feel like we did that, and are we comfortable that we did that?
So there's been a lot of discussion since Tuesday. And, it's fair to say that this is a budget process, and a lot of things are happening at the last minute. And I think this needs to be one of them. So I'd like to have that discussion. It's going to involve EMS billing, and me having a better understanding of what we did with that 1.5 million again, because what I'm going to be proposing is that we're going to use we're going to use EMS billing money to actually fund FADOs and ensure that that $320,000 that we've set aside, it goes directly to funding FADOs during the summer months, the transition period. And I don't see any problem with giving that money to DFEMS and ensuring that it goes where it needs to go. Not that I don't trust CC Visa, but we've already got a voucher program, and we can ensure that that happens the right way. But can you explain to me again the 1.5 million in EMS billing, because I think we're going to need it.
Okay, we upped the revenue. That can only be used for EMS purposes, so there's no way it goes anywhere else. That put $1.5 million on the bottom line. Then we added the $1.5 million of funding to Westminster. So at that point, we used what was created on the bottom line to fund it, knowing that if other things change, we could still go to fund balance to fund it. So a thing that could change is if you said we want to add $1.5 million to EMS, then we would no longer have money on the bottom line, and we would shift money from the fund balance to pay for the Westminster project.
And again, the picture on EMS billing, I totally understand that you can't really predict those dollars, but it looks as though our efforts aren't without reward. We hired 2 EMS billing people, and the estimate is that we could be looking at significantly more money in EMS billing. So I'm going to suggest we do just that. I want to use that, and again, I understand that we cannot use that money for FADOs. But you understand my point of taking that money, putting it elsewhere, and then, I don't know what the right term
Right,
is.
and we wouldn't be using it for FADOs. We'd be using the 1.5 you freed up by
Yes,
adding the revenue.
Thank you, that's a much better way of putting it. So the 1.5 we free up would more than pay for, by my estimation, 16 FADOs. That's the number that looks like it's going to work in conjunction with Chief Robinson efforts to cross-train people, to make sure people are trained as FADOs that he already has. That's enough people, enough FADOs to cover the stations. The money we give to DFEMS to cover FADOs during the transition period is critical because there is a ton of uncertainty out there. And that's what I want to start talking about, and that's what I'm prepared to propose. And if we do that, we still have a problem of finding the people to hire. And that's part of the equation that nobody really wants to talk about, and I get it. The arguments about the 84, and I understand that's been the number that's batted around for years. But provided we find those people, the money's there. If we don't find those people, we've got a pretty good plan, and we've got a great chief to make it work. And even if it does work, we're going to have data coming in, and I think the board unanimously felt earlier this week that regardless of what happens, we're going to have to reevaluate on a constant basis about where people are and where they're going, and that's the chief's job, but that could be something that happens in the future. So I hope I've explained that well enough, and I'd like to put that in motion for discussion.
My question before you make a motion, the chief said he could do it with less.
Yeah.
I said Tuesday, let's put in 500, and I think we put in 180. They're getting $30 million, so they're getting all the billing. You can't add the billing on top of the 30 and say that now they get that too. I'd rather see 500 or $1 million, and especially since we're leaving the 329 or whatever it was, 320 over there, because when we started the budget, it was one or the other. Now we're doing both. And I just, I heard $1.2 million, I heard $1 million, I heard Chief said a couple $100,000. I just, and I said that in the email, the logic of that's billing money so we get it. Well, no, you got 30 million. If you want to live off just the billing, we can talk about that, but I don't think you want to. and I'm correct, right? The billing all goes to EMS, but so does a lot more.
Yes,
The billing's 5 million. is what
It's
you
5
have
million
budgeted.
now.
right. And the 320, remember, is one time, so that's just a bridge. Yes, that's.
Yeah, which
You
is
could
what
say
they,
we're kind of double budgeting in the short term,
Yeah.
and we are in a way, because we don't know
and it's good
how
insurance.
it's going to play out. So, if the board wants to go down path that Commissioner Guerin's suggesting, or some path that looks like that, what we would need is basically now for you to say, add 500,000, add 1 million, add 1.5, whatever that number is. And we don't know, because, in these conversations, we've gone through multiple possibilities of how you could go about doing things. But if the end goal is to make sure that we have FADOs for every company, it's going to be expensive. Now, if we put in 1.5 and it turns out we need 1.2 or 900,000, we don't have to spend that money. It's
Yeah.
appropriated, it's available, but that doesn't mean it has to get spent. And if we do this on the budget side, our goal would be to be watching that money to say, okay, that was put there with the intent of accomplishing this, not other things.
The 320 to CC Visa, that is spent.
If we give it to them, it's spent, yes.
Exactly. So if we leave that there, it's spent. So will you compromise on $1 million?
Well, my understanding is the cost for 16 FADOs. And again, if we decide to do this, we can walk away in knowing that we've hit our mark, and we'll wait and see what happens. But I don't know the exact cost of 16. I thought it was around 1.2. I think it was 87 loaded rate per FADO, if I'm not mistaken, for the county, if someone could do that math for me real quick. And then going back to the 320 for CC Visa, as I stare at the former president of CC Visa right behind you, this is not an issue of trust or anything of
No,
the
no,
sort.
no.
This is,
I just wanted to make the point,
Yeah.
it's spent. It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, they got them all a month early, so we'll get some back. We won't, and that's okay.
and it's okay.
It's good insurance.
I agree, but is that the best use of the money, or does it make more sense to provide that money to DFEMS and allow them to, through the voucher system, make sure, not make sure, just handle that process over the summer through vouchers, because they've got to be monitoring what's going on at the stations anyway. And I know it's just added work for your department chief, but to me, that seems reasonable. We give money to nonprofits all the time. I mean, I don't know why it would be a problem for us to do it differently.
I think it's good use of money.
Well, the problem is a mechanical one, and a legal one. If the concern we have is if we don't have enough people hired quickly enough, and we can't have people on July 1st, or I guess we could start the process, so maybe. But if we don't have enough people on July 1st, and we're looking to them to continue funding people on their own, they need a source of funding. If we keep the money with some idea of, well, if you spend it, we're going to give it to you, the problem is we don't have an appropriation to them in place. So you don't have the legal authority to give them the money at that point. If we want them to be able to do it, then we need to appropriate the money in Visa's name.
To CC Visa. Okay, well, I stand corrected then. So while we're working the numbers for that, the only reason, another point of doing this is that if we do follow through with this, then as the board, I feel as though now we're moving on to that second phase. We're looking at the data. There were some discussions earlier this week about, okay, let's take a look at feasibility studies. What works best for the county? We can start doing all that now as opposed to still trying to figure out if we've got people where we need them. Now, is this over for good? Probably not. I mean, let's face it, it's never going to be over. I mean, it's our fire department. We've got to manage it. It's on us. But I feel at least this way, we're making some tough decisions, but we're allowing ourselves to just go to that next level.
So are you, we put 180 in Tuesday. If we change that 180 to $1.1 million or $1.2 million, are you comfortable?
If
Okay, we think in the first year, because there'll be some one-time costs, it would be about $1.6 million. Oh, wow. Ongoing, that would be somewhat smaller than that.
About 1 point, a little over.
What's the math on that? I don't,
Ongoing would probably be a little over 1.3, but one-time cost would be about 300,000.
and why one-time costs being that, what's the reason that that's more
Well,
than?
we have to have them in uniform to
Their
fight a fire.
kits, yeah.
Outfitted.
They need hat, jacket, pants, boots,
SCBA.
breathing apparatus.
You guys, or the chief, had that spreadsheet that was pay, benefits, and then it was uniforms, training.
Right.
And that's the one-time stuff.
Yes. And
83,200 per position. That includes year one overtime for additional training, that includes the initial issue.
Come on up here.
Uniforms and turnout gear. So it'd be 80, currently, and that's prior to the pay increase that would come in July the 1st. But right now, it's 83,600 per FADO.
It's 86, in your chart that you gave us on Tuesdays, over 86,000.
Yeah, it should be corrected to, the figures I had that were done originally going all the way back to Taylor was, I think, 83,600.
So that's the amount that it should be? Or 86? 83 or 86?
Believe what he thinks, not what he says.
Yeah, 86 might be more appropriate because we're looking at the pay raise that will come about, and that doesn't look into inflation. So it's like everything else, the cost of our PPE, our turnout gear and things has gone up probably since then by 10 to 20%. So,
and this really is not surprising, because you think, we reduced funding by $2.8 million, and the biggest change that was made was taking away the FADOs.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and that was 28 positions that were removed, and we figured 2.8. So if you're adding more than half of them back, then it would be more than half the $2.8 million, just.
Yeah, but again, it's all in the context of the EMS billing, which is important to point out.
Well, FADOs aren't paid by you.
I understand, but the money can be used in other areas to free up money for the FADOs. We have to use it there. I don't know if, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, so we're not talking about additional money, we're talking about,
Yeah, we are.
so we're talking about additional money.
Yes.
Because that's not what you're saying. I think what you're saying is like a shell game. That's where, in your mind, I think that's where you're going, which I'm like, okay, that's cool. But if you're talking additional money,
Well, the trade here is spending the $1.5 million from the additional ambulance revenue versus taking pressure off your bottom line. So you are adding an expenditure to use up the increased revenue.
So how many FADOs?
Well, 16 is what we're talking about here.
16
which
would
not-
be funded, and we're going to reallocate part of the floaters, but we've looked at our current overtime budget and our overtime expenditures based on last year, and we think for a interim measure, we would be able to deploy 12 of those floaters without difficulty.
Okay,
And
but
so-
interim measure, though, I mean, if the end goal is to not keep on doing that.
Right, the end goal would
Yeah,
be,
cost.
But there's 7 stations,
right, so it's 28 FADOs that we would need.
so 4.
So this-
4 shifts, and you need 1 FADO per
Right,
shift. for
so the
7
16 would take care of 4 stations, and then for the other 3 stations, we would look at redeploying our 12 of our floaters
Okay, so that's why
into
you have
FADO
16.
positions would make a net of 28.
Okay.
So that would assure that we had staffing 24/7 for all 7 of those, and then that money, whether you give it to CC Visa or us, I'll call gap money, that will be until we can
So,
hire the
Chief,
people.
you're saying then you need the 1,380, but you still need the 180 from Tuesday because that was for training the other guys. Is that correct?
And if our goal is eventually to have every station fully staffed, we're still going to need another $1 million beyond that sometime. And And this is one of those places where I'm going to say, if that's where we're trying to go, then we ought to be talking about it now, not just saying, well, we'll think about that when we get there. Now, if we're saying we're never going to provide all those FADOs, then this works.
And we can't use the 1.5 for any of this,
Well, we gotta,
that EMS billing. That's-
Well, that is what we're talking about doing.
Right, so theoretically,
The 1.38, we'd be using it from the 1.5?
Yes.
Oh.
But that would push us back to then needing to take 1.5 from fund balance to pay for the Westminster Water Project.
But the EMS billing is every year, that project is one time. So we're looking at EMS billing every year. We hired 2 EMS billing people for a reason. I mean,
Yeah, well, we're not tying ambulance billing to the Westminster Project.
well-
That's only going to get paid one time, no matter what. It's not having
I just wanna
any
point that out.
long-term impact.
yeah.
so we took out 2.5, and now we're putting in 180, $1.5 million, and another 320. So,
We took out 2.8.
Yeah, that's what he said.
I apologize, say that one more time.
You reduced funding by 2.8. And this is why, and I said at the time,
with the agreement of
you
our
added
deputy chief.
300,000 and started netting it out. And I said, don't net it out, because they're just two different actions. And this is why, because it gets confusing when you try to think back to where we were.
And I understand what you're saying, I understand what they must have said at the ESAC meeting. That $1.5 million is EMS money.
Yes, and I wasn't at the ESAC meeting last night.
Okay, but that's what the emails told us. You're already getting 25 more million than billing from, so that money's spent. That's not like extra money that needs to be thrown at this. And like you say, it changed the bottom line.
Well, it's extra money relative to where we were
Yes.
before that change.
Yes.
Increase the revenue line,
Yes.
instead of just putting that money back into general fund, you know, to help defray other general fund costs and lower our general fund expenditures, they just put it on the bottom line and then it sort of got.
But, so this equation is now putting us basically back to 2 million in a hole for FY '25.
No, because we'll move 1.5 from fund balance to pay for the Westminster Water Project, which right now, we paid for because you had extra revenue on the bottom line. So that'll all wash out.
Yeah,
But I think, you know-
I was gonna, just to look at the big picture, I was gonna propose 1 million in ongoing money and $1.5 million for AgPress.
Hey, why don't you take money out of fund balance for the Westminster project? Okay, so that's not going to muddy the water anymore. Okay, now, before you tackle Ag Pres, I think, you know, this is all complicated, but trying to make it as simple as possible. If the funding for EMS remains where it is, there's going to be a significantly reduced level of service from what we had planned. If you want to add back a higher level of service with 16 FADOs, we need to put in the 1.5 or $1.6 million. And recognize that there's a ripple effect that if Michael is taking people who would have been floaters and using them as FADOs, then there's an impact to ambulance EMS service. If you want to get back to where we have fully staffed FADOs again, then we're back to, you can't take the $2.8 million out.
Exactly. And again, we might as well throw away the data. If we're saying we're gonna blindly staff 13 stations, then that data's irrelevant. And that's where we're headed back to. I think we got to phase it in a little bit and look at the data.
I mean, I feel as though that's what we'd be doing with the 16, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with the 16, and,
I'm comfortable with that,
but not the 28, I agree
we
with
added
you. Before.
1,380, we added 180, we added 320, and we added a deputy chief. We're soon past the 2.8.
Yeah, well,
Which is okay, as long as we know that's where we are.
The deputy chief is a separate decision, I know it all.
No, it
but it's not-
wasn't.
It's
No,
not tied to this.
Actually, I voted for it because I said if we're going to cut to 2.8, I'll talk about a deputy chief because that's more important. But where we're at
Okay.
now is everything's important, and we're going to make the 2.83.
Well, I understand. I mean, you and I had those discussions.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to go back on that.
Oh,
But
yeah,
that
I
was
know.
before the EMS billing issue, well, which is a good news story, I guess, in a way, that much money is there. I did not realize it was going to be 5 million. Maybe I should have seen those numbers.
Yeah,
but
3.5 was what was built in already. And then when this idea, we had this bank statement that showed more than we had heard previously, we reevaluated and said we think $5 million is reasonable. So that 1.5 is what you added on Tuesday.
What determines that EMS billing goes exclusively to EMS? Is that a state law? Is that our rule? Is that?
It's kind of an accounting thing and your law. It has to be a legally restricted revenue. So you passed a resolution to restrict it, but it's one of those things where it's not because you made a choice, it's what we have to do.
Gotcha.
So let me ask, I guess, more of an operational question, and this could be directed to the chief. So if we decided to use that 1.5, put that back into the DFEM's budget to fund those 16 FADO positions, rather than allowing that to accumulate at the bottom line, Commissioner Collier's point about, well, what about the data? How do we, is it possible that, say, 3 months from now, if we do this, you say, okay, well, we really don't need this additional driver here, and he can go back and be a floater somewhere else? Would you be able to move them around based on the situation?
Well,
on the
we
ground?
could, but that's not going to go away. So right now in the FY '24 budget, we're providing minimal levels of service. So take out the funding question right now. Right now, between CCV's funding and DFEM's funding, we have each of 13 stations has a medic unit. 3 stations have 2 medic units. That's 2 people per unit. Then on top of that, every station has a FADO. And what that FADO does and how it ties into EMS, in my mind, the primary responsibility of that FADO is to handle that call in that community when that ambulance has a call and is transporting, in some cases, a 2-hour turnaround time. So in the middle of Tawnytown, when that second call comes out, that allows, even with that one person, to respond with EMS equipment, an automatic defibrillator, oxygen, and the ability for him to do CPR. Now, the hope is that volunteers will also come to supplement that call, but the fail-soft mechanism is we're getting at least one person to that additional emergency.
And when you're saying each station has one FADO, that takes 4 people.
4 people,
Shifts to
right,
fill that position.
correct. So in our proposal, by taking part of that billing money, and let's just say it's at 1.5 million, the 2.8 million's already been removed from our budget. That's the given. So our budget and I guess the balance sheet would reflect $2.8 million was deducted. Now we're taking 1.3 million out of money that's earmarked back to EMS. So that money probably on the balance sheet will show that we hired X number of paramedics with that, so there's no question. Whatever funding is there, we'll hire the 16 FADOs, redeploy the 12 floaters, and based on what we calculated, in a worst-case scenario, we have enough money to cover if everybody takes all of their available leave time and all their sick time, we'll have enough revenue to cover that. And the probability of that happening, particularly with first-year employees, is probably not going to happen. But again, it's all probability. So,
Now, is some of that is that 1,380 up, is that what you got there?
Yes.
Is part of that one-time money, or not really, because you'll have more training next year and next year and next year?
well, the training will be less because we hire people at a minimal level of training. They have a year during their probation, which is built into their year 1 funding per position. that they have to get that training. So in subsequent years, the level of training, for some people, that may be as much as 100 hours. But in subsequent years, the maintenance that's required under mandates, state, local licensing, and things like that, is going to be much less. So that level of overtime goes away. The turnout gear can be used for up to 10 years, so that's another 4,000 or 5,000 that goes off the top, so.
You know, and to fully answer your question, it's going to take us some time to see how things actually work. You know, at some point, we're going to say X dollars a year of training is going to be the right number.
Yeah.
But we're not going to know that until 3 or 4 years from now.
But the problem is, what we're creating right now is in fiscal year '27, we're gonna have to raise taxes.
1380, just to answer your question simply, I believe, does not include the one-time costs of like the uniforms and the SCBA's and all that. I think it's another few $100s per person. It gets us up
So
to,
you don't think that's in there?
that's my understanding. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, but
So
I
the-
don't want 1380, I thought someone told us,
1.6.
someone officially has to be 1.6.
Well, we've got 1.5. That's as much as we've got. So, I mean,
Yeah, and we don't know
I
any
don't
of these
wanna-
numbers exactly enough.
I know, but
So I'm agreeing with you.
okay, thanks. I mean, to say that I'm being conservative right now would not be accurate, because I'm not. We're spending some money. But, yeah, this 1.5 is what we've got.
So out of curiosity, we had put 180,000 in for cross-training and upgrading positions. Does that need to remain in there? Because we're not going to be doing that at this point?
Well, yeah, we are still talking about doing that because you're not providing enough FADOs to fully staff every company. Now, as this continues to develop, if Michael has a plan that gets us where we need to go without staffing that way, then we can reevaluate that. But right now, the assumption is we will need to hire some FADOs and we will need to have some other people who are capable of performing as FADOs.
So how
Okay.
did the 1,380 go to 1,000,005?
Because, like Roberto was saying, we don't think that fully accounts for all the one-time costs.
But then, why isn't that one-time money? Now we're 200,000 in the hole this year and got to raise taxes in '27. We're creating a problem.
Well, and my question, Berlin, so this is a brand-new cost that we're discussing right now, correct?
No, this was part of the plan before. It's taking $2.8 million out that made this an issue.
The $2.8 million out was done early on,
Right.
but this right now is a brand-new line.
He's adding part of that back.
Is that-
So the 2.8 would have paid for all 84 positions that we anticipated hiring in '25. Then the board reduced it by 28 positions,
Right.
taking it down to 56. And now the suggestion is to bring it up by 16 to 72. So it's somewhere in between. You're 12 less than the original plan from a year
So,
ago.
so we took out 2.8 and we're adding back 2 million.
Well, at
Basically.
least.
It's,
Well, no, because the 320, like you said, or the
320, the 180, and the 1.6.
The
it's
320 will be
one-time,
one time,
but
though.
still, we're
So you-
adding
and the
back in.
deputy chief and whatever else we talked about.
And to Commissioner Kyler's question about, the one-time cost, again, I mean, we're kind of doing this on the fly here. We'll need to figure out things over time. Yes, all those costs won't repeat, but they're not truly one-time costs either. When you buy turnout gear, you will have to buy it again. So we'll need to get to some better understanding of how do we have to think about this on an annual basis. But yes, there will be some drop between 25 and 26.
The other thing, real quick, is that we have a list of qualified people that want to reclassify to FADO. So we have 10 people on that list. So the people we hire, which would be 6 more FADOs under this proposal, would be considerably less because we have 10 that are already trained. So those 10 will be replaced with firefighter EMTs, which is a much lesser cost.
But
So
is that leaving a gap for EMS? That you have to hire?
Right, the hiring for the EMS people is already built into it. into
So
the
this
current
should be
formula.
6 new FADOs and 10 retrained.
Right. Well, you're still going to have 16 bodies that will be
Oh, I
hired.
understand, but I'm looking at the cost.
Yeah, so you may be some variance of a few $100,000. So if you take 86,000 times 16, I think that'll give you a 1.38 or something along that
That's-
line.
But then you have to add the one-time costs.
Yeah.
Well, to look at the bottom line, we now have ag pres where they can't look at one more average size farm. So add 1 million ongoing and 1.5 million one time to get them back to where we cut them. And what's that do with our bottom line?
Okay, but can I, just going back real quick, Chief, the cost, it was line item 35, that cost of 180, why, does that need to be a recurring cost? The line item 35, the 180, does that have, why is that recurring then?
Okay, that's what we were talking about just a little while ago. It probably won't need to be 180, but you're not just going to train people today and then you're done forever. You know, people are going to come and go. So that number will probably go down, but we really don't know exactly what to do with that yet.
But that was never in the budget to train people?
No, this just came out of that recent conversation you had.
There is training in the budget. This was specific to allow some EMTs to
Yeah.
upgrade to FADOs to, so
Which
you
is
didn't
one
have
time.
to hire separate FADOs.
Yeah.
It's only one time if you get those people and nobody ever leaves.
Yeah.
But to your question, though, it won't need to be $180,000 a year. It'll be something less.
Okay, and it could probably be absorbed by the training budget if it's low enough number.
Maybe ultimately, yeah.
So I want to put, if we decide to do this, we should put a footnote up there on 35 about, so we're sitting here this time next year.
Oh, yeah, we're taking notes on
Okay,
all this.
all right.
And they're,
Thanks.
and all these details are things we know we need to work through. And this has been one of the difficulties as we've been going through these 3 years, is it's not like we had, here's where you're going to end up, what is this going to cost? You know, we've been developing this and changing it, and even now, just this last month, you know, we've rolled through significant different possibilities. And with all of it, we'll be in a much stronger position after we've seen how it actually works for a couple of years than we are right now trying to anticipate how it's going to work.
So the 16 FADO positions gives us a total of what, as far as a number?
72,
72.
56 and 60.
56 and the 16, correct, 72.
And we believe that that is a necessity to put in place now.
Well, that's the big question.
Well,
Yes.
I know, maybe I'm not asking you, I'm asking,
No, so based on what we're delivering today, to not have any of the FADOs at any of the stations means we're reducing service
Right.
from what it is now.
right,
No matter who's staffing it or where they're coming from is immaterial. The fundamental issue is right now, every station has a FADO 24/7. We're changing where those employees are coming from, and so that's the objective, is to maintain that level. So with this whole funding this year, we're not really we're not adding anybody to the system other than that they're employees. So we're replacing historically CCVSA employees
to county employees.
to county employees.
Yeah, I realize it's counterintuitive what we're doing right now, but we wouldn't be having this discussion if it wasn't for the EMS billing. And it's just that simple. And
But the EMS billing doesn't fund EMS.
Doesn't
So
fully
it
fund.
doesn't matter if it goes up. They're getting $30 million. EMS billing's 5. So they're 25 taxpayer money. So if it went from 3.5 to 5, it would reduce the taxpayer money that goes into, it would still all go to EMS. they're getting way more than they're billing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So it's not like this is extra money.
And I guess that's where I was kind of stuck. Is this, we're able to do this because of the EMS billing, the 1.5? And you
We
said-
upped the revenue,
Yeah,
so that displaced the use of tax dollars. So you had tax dollars available in '25 that you didn't have. Now, part of the problem, though, is it doesn't give you extra money in those years that are negatives. The negatives get a little bit better, but
Yep.
they're still negatives.
Yeah.
and
So-
go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's right.
By doing this, though, we're not masking anything. We're not upping revenue, saying this isn't really.
No,
realistic.
this isn't hiding anything. I mean, it's still, you still have the right picture.
And you're comfortable with 72 at this point?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with based on what we've done in overtime previously, and the fact is, this will be year 2 of our staffing, so the amount of training will be for the new employees, but the incumbent employees will be what I'll call maintenance of effort training, which means these are the mandates they have to have every year, which will be less than hiring the new employees. So last year, the current fiscal year, we hired 148 employees. So all 148 of those employees, we had to enhance their training all year. So now we're going to hire with the 72 employees, they'll be to that level that we'll have to do enhancement training, but that's half the number that we did this year.
Yeah, now, of course, uncertainty runs in both directions, though. So we probably will not need as much training money each year. And training money, specifically talking about training EMTs to be able to be FADOs. But what goes along with that is we're pulling people away from EMS service, which is going to require overtime. We don't know what that's going to be, but it's possible that will end up being more than we're planning on. But again, we'll need some experience to say, here's how it's working.
And I understand that, but there's people watching today that don't think we should raise taxes. That's
Yep,
in there.
I've heard that.
And we got an extra $1.5 million, so in about 30 minutes, we spent it.
Yes.
Right.
And
That's
that's okay if
got
we're all for
confusing.
raising
That's
taxes.
where I got confused.
You know, it's,
Yeah, and I'm absolutely not advocating for spending that money. My big point here is, if you want the level of service back up again, there's going to be a cost. There's no free path to it.
Right.
but then I go back to the data so far shows less calls. So if we're going to fund 13 stations blindly, how are we going to adjust?
How's the data showing less cost?
The data, the spreadsheet we had showed less
Calls.
calls. Now,
Yeah,
it's
once-
going to change. I understand
No,
that.
I think you're right. I mean, I completely agree. If this, we should be looking, I mean, we don't have to look at it. We're paying people to do that, but they should be looking, and you're right, the numbers are going down because you're having to have
But
less
how do we
people respond.
adjust? If we're blind.
Well, we can only give them what they need.
So what would be
Right.
the magic number? If it's not 16, is it 10, is it 12, is it 8, is it,
Well, whatever you do now, I think it's fair to say that we do want to evaluate what's happening over time. And I think the board should be saying to the world, we're not saying this is the plan for forever. Things could change as we know better how things are working. Now, part of it, though, it's almost like fixed costs. If you decide a level of service, whether you have 10,000 calls or 9,500 calls probably doesn't change how much you need to spend to be able to respond to those calls. Now, if it goes from 10,000 to 2,000, then you've got something, but I don't think we're expecting that.
or we are increasing the bottom line by doing this?
Yes.
Tuesday, we said 180 would get all the FADOs. Now we're adding $1.5 million.
No, I don't think we were ever saying that.
No, that
And I was
was
a
a-
little worried that it was
Oh, I
being
understand you were
received
worried.
that way.
I was worried too, but we said that'll make it work. That's how we came up with that dollar.
That was for the
was
volunteer
cross-training.
staffing, I
Yeah.
believe.
No, the 180 would have
Was
trained.
cross-training.
Cross-training the current people, right.
Right.
And they would have done a, what is that called, Michael, first need? what-
Handle first emergency, but
Right.
what that would have done is, when we were handling that first emergency, there's no backup.
Oh, I
So when the
understand.
second call comes in, whether our medic crew's out on a fire, or whether they're on an ambulance call, then there's nobody coming for a long time.
So at a given amount of funding, it was a way to try and accomplish it.
Yes.
But that's why I keep harping on, we can't lose that there's a service level change when we choose these paths.
Well, pick one, Limeboro, my area. Did they have all these people now?
Yeah, right now, today at Lineborough Station, there's 3 people. Under our proposal, there'll be 3 people, but there'll be county people.
So we are replacing.
Yeah.
And again, like I say, AgPres, we've got them down to where they can't look at one more farm.
For the current year or for the future year?
Well,
Well, let's deal with this first.
yeah, that's what I was
Well,
saying is,
I understand this, but
do we want to go with
we're,
this?
we're gonna be over $1 million in the hole. We gotta balance it.
But my thought is, where are we going with this right now? Because we're adding this additional cost. Are we satisfied in doing that and then moving on to another line? Or are we, like we've done everything else, we've made motions and seconds and
No.
that, I just, I wasn't expecting, maybe, well, I wasn't expecting this, and maybe I should have been. But this is just like a new twist in me right now. I don't know. I mean, I thought the cross-training was going to provide the appropriate path forward.
It was an in-between way of trying to get a level of service.
I thought it was an in-between way with a little bit of legs to it, that it can
Well,
last
but at the
for-
same time, it was reducing service. It was
Yeah.
giving us options, so,
Okay.
but it was still reducing
Yeah.
service.
I,
This would put us up to where we are. We're not enhancing service, other than we're going to be able to guarantee that 24/7, all these units will be consistently staffed.
And none of the fire halls will need their own HR and we're
Right,
getting rid
and
of
we'll
all
take
that.
them out of that whole business, so they can focus on recruitment, retention, getting people to the stations.
And then by July 1st, it's the same with, when you said HR, you meant, and same with EMS billing, that whole procedure with the stations as well?
Yes, we'll be taking
July
over,
1st will
so
be the-
what will happen is in those 7 stations that we're taking over the staffing, by July the 1st, we'll be ready, or by the time, every time we put staffing in there, so July the 1st, some stations will have enough people to initially staff probably 4 or 5 of the 7 stations. The others will use that $320,000, that I'm going to call gap money, to fill that gap till we have enough people hired. Now, we're in the hiring process now, we're advertising now for anticipated positions, and we're going to have as many people ready to go, so as soon as the HR dates come, the first one's not till the 18th of July, but we'll be ready.
All right, so help me here. So the 1.5, we'll say goes in, and the 320 for the transition, but now I'm lost about the 180 for the cross-training. So if the 320 is supposed to be for the transition, then do we need the additional 180?
Yeah, because we're not fully staffing all the FADOs. So you're increasing the number of FADOs that will be in place to perform that job. But Michael would still be looking to make some EMTs qualified to be able to help fill in.
Right.
So if you don't do the 180, then you don't get those people who have the cross-trained qualification, which again, will be some impact on service.
Well, then,
it provides flexibility.
should the 1.5 be 1.4, or we're imagining, because if
The
some of,
1.5 is what you need for the 16. But the 16 doesn't fully staff all stations.
But we don't
Right.
have 213,000 of it.
What was that?
Bottom line, we're in the hole.
Yeah, well,
So what are we going to cut?
so, well, hold on. I don't, I know where you're going with this, but I also just want to ask the question. All of the positions, they're going to be hired, they're all going to be county employees under the county system. How much more is under CC Visa?
Nothing. This will convert all the,
This will be the last.
this will take, by the time we have the hiring in place, which will probably take until the fall, there'll be no longer any CC Visa funded positions. So there'll be no need for any stations to be paying their own people, hiring people. You know, there's nothing to keep them from hiring extra people, but that's on them.
But that's why this is one-time money for CC Visa, because this is the last year.
Yes. And on your question about the $213,000 negative, I know this is not what you usually hear from me, but if this is where we end up, and we've got a minus 213,000, I'm not worried about that.
That's
I
around
mean,
here, right?
Yeah, you know, on property tax, that's a small fraction of a percent. We'll up our projection by 213, and you'll be balanced. Now, if it was $1.2 million, I wouldn't be saying that.
And working with our new budget analyst, what we'll be doing is we'll be tracking that money. So as we try to cross-train people so we have depth in the system, certainly if that money isn't used, then you may be able to recover some of that. But we can't predict any of that right now.
So provided we can find the people to hire,
And that's the biggest
This-
thing, is going
this-
to be the
yeah.
recruitment, because
Yeah.
there's 1,000 vacancies in the Baltimore, you know, the Baltimore metro
and
region.
for people watching and listening, we cannot control that, but if things do go well this fall, we're looking at stations with county employees and our faithful volunteers.
Yep. But I
can
think the
happen.
message that we're going to send here today, hopefully, is that we do recognize the need, and by restructuring the financing of this internally, more of our people are going to be in the right direction, and the people outside are going to say, hey, this is something that's going to continue to be sustained.
You know, and our budget decisions and our ability to fill the positions are really two different things, for now at least. Now, if we budget for a certain number of positions, and 3 years from now, we're saying, you know what, we can't fill these positions, then just like we talked about with the roads positions a few weeks ago, we could have that same discussion. If we're never going to get the people, then maybe we shouldn't be budgeting for them. But right now, I think we have to budget in a way that accomplishes what you want to, and then find out that we can't get the people.
You're getting way too flexible. It's 4 o'clock, huh?
So, are we moving forward with this, or what?
Make a motion.
Yeah. A motion that we utilize $1.5 million in EMS billing money to transfer to DFEMS to be allocated or appropriated for the hiring of 16 FADOs. Does that give enough flexibility in the motion that we're not using money for the wrong purpose?
Good.
Or you
We
could
got
just
a
say
second?
16 additional FADOs.
Or, yeah, that's the motion, 16 additional FADOs.
I'll second it.
Motion is second. Any more discussion?
Just we're adding more funds into the budget. And going back to where you were, Commissioner Fowler, is, where are we gonna cut? We're not gonna,
Where's the revenue for recordation? Are we comfortable with how much we raised that?
To 650?
And if we are, we are, but
We didn't,
I wanted to talk about
vote
that.
on that motion about the EMS.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know
No, we've
if
not voted.
But,
We have a
but he's
motion and
saying
a
I don't
second.
even know
about
if I
the
had a
bottom
second.
line.
No, there was a
That was
second,
his
Commissioner
discussion.
Bigliotti.
I just didn't want to, I thought maybe there was a new conversation, I just didn't want
No,
to.
no, 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 it's like,
Just
you
making
know,
sure we
it's-
don't miss.
if somebody would have told me we'd walk in here and spend over $1.5 million in the first part of the meeting, I'd have said, oh, you're crazy.
That's what I wasn't.
And if we need to, we need to, but it's, this kills any talk of we shouldn't raise taxes.
Well, I still want to have that conversation, so.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I know that, but
Right.
let's get through
Okay.
this.
Yeah, yeah.
You've got a mo-
okay.
You've got
And
the-
I mean, it's sticker shock, and I just.
It
I
is,
wasn't
it
expecting
is.
it.
I mean, it's sooner or later, we gotta
Probably
wonder
should
how
have.
we're gonna pay for stuff.
You know, and since you removed the 2.8, you've had a lot of feedback from people, which is why we're having this conversation. And I think, you know, the message you've been hearing, and you can agree with it or not agree with it, but the message you've been hearing is that's not going to work.
If we weren't looking at the additional 1.5 million in EMS billing, I wouldn't have brought it up.
But
Yeah,
they're
but what I'm saying is,
tied, but they're not.
we're doing
actually-
exactly what the
Well,
anti-raise taxes
the
people are
EMS
doing. We're saying, oh, we
replaces
got
the
another
general
$1.5
fund
million,
money that's
let's hurry
going
up and
into
spend it.
EMS, and then the general fund
You
is
know,
in it.
and.
I don't
and
wanna-
That's okay if we're happy raising taxes.
I don't want to spend it, but I don't,
Oh, I understand.
based on what we've seen the last 2 weeks, and I was right here when we proposed taking the money out of the budget, and it doesn't look like it's going to work without these FADOs. It just,
Yeah.
it's causing a lot of,
And to me,
Stress and
it's
consternation.
giant. If we'd left it like it was, we'd have had a little bit of stations paying employees. This gets rid of it. And to me, that's giant. I just,
I mean, I understand the point about the EMS billing, and that gave you confidence to do this, but they're not tied, are they?
I feel they should be.
I
I mean, that's where the money should be
I don't know.
going.
that's, I mean, if you said EMS tied to other EMS positions or something, that'd be one thing, but tying them to FADOs, that's where I thought you were like, okay, this is a wash because, and that made sense, but.
Okay, you just have to think about it in two steps. The increased EMS billing freed up general fund revenue, which then allowed you to make this change for
Yeah, but
FADOs.
the general fund revenue could be used to lessen our tax burden or. other-
Yes, and that's something, that's what I said at the very beginning. That's what we're trading, is flexibility in your budget for an increased level of service from where we were.
yeah, now, if we do this, we can't even reduce taxes.
Well, we're,
And we're probably gonna raise them in 2 years.
no.
And if everybody's okay with that, I'm okay with it, but.
Okay, as long as, I mean, I said my piece on this, and I don't disagree, especially if she's saying this is a requirement, and I've said this from day one, I don't question the experts making requirements, but as long as our eyes are wide open, saying that this is $1.5 million that we're adding on to the bottom line, I'm okay with that.
And I will touch again on that in a few minutes when we talk about the taxes, because there's
Ready
some,
to vote?
yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Okay, you're welcome. Chief, you're gonna pay for this.
Just let you know, there is an eraser up there.
Get me through the next CCBs.
We can't make her pay anymore. Okay, again, back to AgPres. Based on their current funding available and the projects that are in process, they can't look at another farm. We took $2.5 million ongoing out. If we do it all one time, in fund balance, are we comfortable with 2.5 million, or how tight's fund balance getting now?
Well, we still have, well, we're below 20 now because you used 1.5
So
for
it's
the
like 18,
Westminster
18.5.
project. So what is it now?
We didn't vote on that, though. But
Yeah, we need to, we're not done with the
Well, I don't think they voted on it the other way either. I
fund
just
balance,
said, let's
because
do it
that money
that
was
way
added
until
straight to
we
deficit.
get a better picture.
so,
We did vote the other day, though.
just under 19.
Okay, so yes, it's available. You know, you can make it, you know, what's comfortable is a fairly large conversation that we could have. But right now, it doesn't appear that we're using the one-time money to fix the operating budget, so it's more comfortable than it would have been.
Yeah, I don't want to do
Could,
that. So,
Well, the comfort level you always share is about 5%.
Well, I've wanted to establish a separate 5%, which would be about what is sitting here, but we've never gotten to a point of the board acting on that.
So if I could, real quickly. So we're looking at, based off the email that we received on 3/27, it's $440,716.28. We're receiving an additional $446,250,000 from MALF, which brings us to $866,966.
do you know when we're getting that?
That'll be in the relatively near future.
Okay.
I mean, I
they
can't give you an
always
exact
act like
date.
They never know.
We also currently, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't think we've affected this, we put in $1.3 million in bond money, which then gets us to $2 million from MALF.
1 million.
1 million, I'm sorry, so 1 million there. So you're looking at $3,866,966.28. There's also an additional $500,000 that's coming in from Rural Legacy, which we used Rural Legacy this morning for that
Yep.
61 acre, which of course, it's all state money, it's not our taxpayers.
Right.
So that would give us roughly, let's see, what would that be? What did I say, 3.8, and then another 5. And then potentially in the fall, there's additional rural legacy money that'll be coming in. So you're looking at, bear with me a second.
4.5, 4.7?
Yeah, somewhere in that range. The big thing would be, we would have to utilize most of it through strictly MALF and rural legacy. And that would alleviate using taxpayer money from the county taxpayers versus maximizing state funds, which to me would at least get us that 4 million and change to utilize for this next round of AgPres. That way we're not tapping into the 1.5, the 2.5, or whatever number we'd want to pull out of just our actual fund balance.
So you sound confident of that. Is JP confident of that? And
I had a conversation with Chris Hines this morning.
they're confident with that?
Yeah, there was enough comfort there. I mean, and the reality is, and I know most of us know a lot of different things on this program, not to be funny about that, but, you know, back when the 59th board was in place, that AgPres was shut down for a short period of time. There was an interruption of commitments. There were people that had to wait 3 years to get into the program.
Yeah.
We've been exceptional, I think, in what we've been able to accomplish. By no means do any of us want to affect or, you know, lock that down in any negative sense. And obviously, we don't know what next year holds with the state. I mean, that's just being completely blunt and honest.
Yep.
We don't know what'll come in from MALF. You know, maybe, at this point, they may say 0, they may change it within the year, we don't know. But I think it at least gets us, in a practical sense, not utilizing county tax dollars, but also allows this program to still flourish. That's just my thoughts.
But, so you've got about 4 million. They show total projects in promise right now of 6.3.
Yes.
So if we do 2 million, we'd be around the 6.
2 million one time.
Yeah, of one time. Which, it's taxpayer money, but it's fund balance taxpayer money.
They don't care where it comes from. All they care, not taxpayer, I'm talking about those going through the program. They just care that it's
Yeah.
green, you know? That would bring our fund balance down to 17 million. And it's probably as low as we're gonna wanna go because.
Yeah, I don't.
Go into
yeah,
a danger
I don't think
zone.
we'll go anymore.
Is that the last major muscle movement that we see?
You mean in
You
that?
you still want to talk about, as far as expenses?
Are we going to vote on the ag pres? I'm not comfortable doing that this year.
You say you're not or you are?
I'm not. I don't think it's the year to do it. We've got so much going on with that budget. And if we can get them enough money through grants, I mean, I couldn't follow half the stuff you were saying, sorry.
It's all right.
But I just,
Even though it's one-time funds, not ongoing.
I just have a,
They're probably the only entity in our budget that we took $2.5 million out of
Yeah.
ongoing.
That was the
And I'm
first day
saying,
I
let's put it
did.
in at one time.
Right, and I will agree with Commissioner Guerin. I'm not comfortable with that at this time, especially given what I'm going to propose in a couple of minutes or whenever we get to the discussion. But we are still giving them funding. We are continuing on with the program, and as
No,
Commissioner
no, we're
Gordon
not.
said.
We're not. We took away $2.5 million. We're not giving them funding. And I respect what you said, but a lot of that's maybes. It might be in the fall, might be whenever.
Most of it
And all
isn't.
I know is the Ag Board is currently thinking, we can't look at anything new because we don't have the money.
Even with, how much do they get, how much do we have in there for Ag Pres right now?
400,000.
440 plus the 446,
Yeah.
No,
446
So
on
we
the
have
back.
about $2.5 million. You have $1 million from the state, 1.3 that we use to match the state, and then some hundreds of thousands of ag transfer
For the coming year?
tax. Yeah,
It's there right now.
yeah, and that continues into the future.
And is that in this 6.8 or not?
I don't know.
I don't know
That's
either.
not,
I
this
assumed
is
it
moving
would.
forward. That wouldn't be in the 6.8, because these were just
that's
those
not reflected,
properties.
okay.
No, that's not within that list.
So,
Yeah, what was provided, the balances, are budgets that have already been adopted.
Correct.
It's not any of the funding that's associated with FY '25.
so it's there.
So
we
what's
have
in
money-
it for FY
So we have money
'25?
allocated.
For all the normal stuff that Ted just mentioned, the ag transfer tax, the MALF match, the 2 million from
Right.
them, the 1.33 from us.
The rural legacy.
Thank you.
Yeah, right,
So
that,
so we don't need,
so it's something more than $2.5 million a year. And that doesn't count rural legacy, because we never know what we're going to get from them. We don't even budget that.
Yeah.
We just deal with it once we get a
so-
number.
but that's a difference in opinion than what you're saying. You're having a belief that there's only 400,000 there. Why is there such a difference?
That's what we were emailed.
I know, so why is there such a difference when we're told 400,000, but then you're saying there's 2.3
Yeah.
million, whatever it is?
The last time we asked this, when we were looking at properties, we were told they're slow paying a lot of these because they don't have the money.
For FY
And I just think AgPres for however many years, this county brags about it. And now we want to cut them by $2.5 million
Right, and that,
of ongoing.
and that's true for FY '24, you're right.
Of
For
ongoing.
'24, there is not as much funding as, I guess is the proper way to say it, as they would like.
I think part of the confusion might be looking at how much funding is available against how many possible acquisitions there are. And even, I don't know about that list, but sometimes the possible acquisitions, not all of them turn into
yeah, one of
to
those could fail.
an actual easement. But one thing I don't think anybody would say that we're willing to fund whatever, if you get $10 million worth of people who want easements, I don't think we're going to say we're going to fund 10 million. So there's going to be some line where we're going to say, here's how much we're willing to fund. And in some years, that might mean that they can't fund everything that people are applying for. And, and when you talk about that, this is another level of service issue, but I would say this is a very different level of service than when we were talking about EMS. I think there's, is an ambulance going to show up is different than how many acres can we acquire
Right.
this year. And the program there's no number that we're talking about that will stop them from acquiring easements. The only question is, how quickly are we going to be adding to the total?
And did you guys see Chris Hines' email of 11/20?
No, I'm not.
The state is merging MAL fiscal year of 25 and 26. They will be allocating less
Yes.
than our normal 2 million.
Yeah, I said that.
So another way to look at this is fiscal year 25 will be less than normal, and there will not be any fiscal year 26. Rural agency, we currently have about $1.2 million. However, we have 2 applications that will take about 700 of that. So we have 500,000 available for other applicants. We won't find out what and if there will be funding in our next round of rural agency, which is what you said. I just think we're really banging on our ag press.
No, I get that, and, I think I'd,
What's the reluctance of using one-time money because of the budget?
well, so I'm just to play this out to next year, we get to next year, do we have to use one-time money again and keep using one-time money to, right,
We ought to go back to ongoing.
taking it up from
I
the
mean,
1.3 to?
We took out 2.5 million ongoing.
Right. Right.
That's what we took out, and we're not even willing to give back 2 million one time.
When we get to this place next year, though, it will be the same conversation, right? That we will.
I don't
consider-
know.
Maybe.
Maybe?
I think at some point in time, the projects and process are gonna get smaller because they're gonna get harder to find, which is another reason why I think we need to take them as quickly as we can right now.
Yeah, and just to go back to how we took the $2.5 million out, if you remember, you were looking for places where you could make a choice to reduce funding. AgPres is just one of the few places where
Right.
there was a noticeable amount that
Right.
you could do. And at that point, there was a decision, okay, yes, let's do that.
They were an easy
Right.
target.
They were
And
very
again,
easy.
if we get all that and this 2 million doesn't get spent, it goes back into your fund balance.
Well, no, this goes into a capital project, so they retain it. If it doesn't get spent in 1 year,
So they
it's
retain it.
still available for the next. Although, and again, to your point, it's going to get harder. Will we run into a time when they're not able to spend it all? Someday that's going to happen. I don't know when that is yet. But historically, we have spent what's available.
And we wanted to, last year, we wanted to reinforce our goal that we want to get to 100,000 acres. But again, if that's,
I'll make the motion to use one-time funding of $2 million for AgPres.
I'll second it. Any more discussion?
1 or 2, I'm sorry.
2.
2.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
So voted down.
Okay.
I told
Do-
them I
do
would
wanna-
try. They said
no.
the third time would be a charm, and I
Well.
said,
I was the
Don't bet
first
it.
one to take that 2.5 out, and, ongoing, because I felt, and I still feel it's the right thing
so
to
are
do.
we done?
I just want to make a point, and then with you, their clarification, point of clarification, we know this in this room about one-time funds and ongoing funds, but it seems like it gets pretty mixed up in some people's minds, that why are you paying for a sheriff's headquarters and not for this or that? And kind of combining the one-time funds and ongoing funds, or saying, why are you doing it this year when you could do it next year, or 2 years? And like Ted, you share, if you're going to do it, then do it, whether it's next year or the year after, put it in the budget. So it's not about delaying funds. It's important that these messages continue to get across, because they're tough decisions. But we're looking at different ways of using funds that are, that are there, that are our taxpayers' funds, that are taxpayers' dollars. ongoing dollars for ag pres was not appropriate, and we took it out. One-time funds, I thought was appropriate, it didn't pass, that's fine, so it's not in there. But it's another way of looking at, you know, slicing the apple, or whatever you want to say, so that's all I just wanted to share. You've been waiting very patiently with your great ideas.
Well, everybody may not have too much patience with me after them, but we'll see.
With public safety, we will be raising taxes in fiscal year '27.
No.
Well, so to that point, everybody remembers at the very beginning of our budget deliberations, there were a bunch of questions that I asked about certain things. And Ted, unless the answer has changed, please do correct me, right? So we're not exactly sure how the assessments, the increased assessments, are going to affect us with the budget, correct?
Right. We
Right.
can never know until it gets here.
And we have, what, one more distribution of tax revenue in August, I think, or something? Or is it?
We have one at the end of this month, actually just a couple weeks, and then one more big one, but it's spread over June, July, and August.
Okay. After, you know, the email and the information about emergency medical billing, you know, we're getting a better sense of that. And, you know, I can only imagine that as more responsibilities absorbed into DFEMS, the amount of billing revenue will increase. I'm not sure how much or how dramatically, but it will be more than it is today. We are certain, especially after the decision we made about the 1.5, we know that we need ambulances and we need EMTs to be able to respond to medical emergency calls. Have to. Everybody remembers some weeks ago I made the argument about how the recordation tax is the least harmful and the least offensive tax that there is. I know that we are, after our meeting the other day, I know it's too late to raise the recordation tax anymore. But between the public hearing and everything that has ensued, I know we've all gotten emails, texts, calls about concerns from citizens about the increase in taxes. I do not deny that the recordation tax has to be at $6.50. It cannot continue to be what it was. The argument that I started making on Tuesday was, well, what about the property tax rate? Because that will hit more people, and that will be a harder hit for more people. So, to my understanding, the 2 cents in property tax revenue that's been, or property tax increase revenue that has been proposed is $4.8 million, correct?
Yes.
All right. So I've come up with a number of possibilities about how we might go about not having to increase the 2 cent tax, the property tax. Some of it is going to be one time, and it's not a perfect solution, and it doesn't help us in the long term. Some of the options are not going to be popular with certain people. But I feel that you know, it's important that we do try, or at least I propose to everybody, that we try to find a way to curtail that 2 cent tax increase. And I know that's going to massively affect the bottom line. So the simplest thing, and the only number I don't have offhand, what was the cost of the Georgetown extension? It was 1.7, I think, or something? Something like that?
And you take it out and it doesn't change to 213 from 213.
I'm,
It's irrelevant. And it's fiscally irresponsible.
well, and
I mean, we just sat here and added millions to the budget, and now we want to cut taxes. We tied our hands an hour ago. You guys said, I want to raise taxes, let's add this. It's over. But go ahead. I mean, I cannot advocate us doing something totally fiscally irresponsible. And why we'd want to cut a project to do smoke and mirrors on a budget.
well, the idea is to try to delay certain things.
And look at the future years.
Oh,
We'd be idiots.
I'm aware, but part of the thing is that we're not quite sure where EMS billing revenue is going to end up. We don't quite know how assessments are going to impact us yet, and we're still outstanding questions about tax distributions. there's a lot that can happen, and like I said, not all these are good options. There's going to be risk involved for sure, but we can't not talk about it.
On the revenue projections, you're correct. There's uncertainty about all three of those things. Now, on property tax and income tax, it's possible that growth will be less than we've built in. It's not only an upside. But every year, this will continue to be true. We'll never know what those numbers are going to be until we actually experience it. But I think that the thing I can very confidently say, there's not an unexpected $25 million of growth in revenues. I could be wrong, but there's no way I could responsibly suggest to you that we should be expecting that to happen.
Oh, and I would not, that's not the point of what I was getting at, I promise you. That's not where I was going with that. If anything, this year demonstrated that the 30 million that had been accumulated each year for the last couple of years was not going to pan out for this year. So I take that point completely. Did we have a number on Georgetown Boulevard?
Oh, yes, it's just under $2 million.
Just under 2? Okay. It was like 1.9 something?
Yep.
197.
All right. So again, given all the uncertainties about assessments and where things may end up, and given what we know about the economy, the financial situation of some of our citizens, to me, removing the 2-cent tax increase, removing Piney Run from this year and PFAS from this year and Georgetown puts us in a position where we do not have to raise taxes this year.
Piney
It-
Run, what do you mean?
The Piney Run
I
Dam
don't
is 1 point,
understand.
the Piney Run Dam, we have
It
1.5.
has zero effect on us raising
Yeah,
taxes.
but-
That's not what he's,
In future years, it doesn't affect us, but in the current year, it does.
Well,
Wait,
it-
wait,
it-
wait.
It doesn't
Bear-
affect.
Wait a second, bear with me,
Yep.
I just wanted to understand, I didn't hear, Piney Run, what?
Piney Run Dam.
PFAS are both,
Okay,
Take,
fund balance.
we did this a couple weeks ago. Take every project out, and look at the 213, and
That-
it'll look
Kenny?
identical.
Okay, now on these three projects specifically, they're almost entirely funded by fund balance. So if we take out the expenditure, we'll take out the transfer of fund balance, the net effect to the bottom line will be zero. The budget will be
So-
smaller, but you got rid of a revenue and an expenditure.
So Piney Run, removing that would not help.
None of those would help,
PFAS would not help, Georgetown would not help.
right?
Okay.
Because you're funding them with fund balance.
balance, right.
Now, as one time, it would get us through this year. I know.
No, it wouldn't.
It will have no effect on the bottom
Instead
line,
of-
even for
No effect on the
fiscal year
operating
'25.
budget.
Instead of going to the general fund, instead of going back into the
unfunded,
what am I, fund, thank you.
unfunded balance.
Yeah,
We
so
would apply-
instead
we
of your
would
fund
apply-
balance dropping to 17 million, it would bounce back up to 21 million or something like that.
Yeah, it-
Right, and then we would apply that to the bottom line.
Right, so you take the one-time money and put that on the bottom line.
yeah.
Right.
And that's what you want to do, is take one-time money and put it on top of?
Well, it would get us through this year. It would get us through some uncertainties about, okay, well,
No, I'm just shaking my head, I'm
yes.
not talking.
Oh, okay, okay.
Keep going.
Okay,
I'm-
so I want to be clear
Yes.
on what I was saying. It will have no effect on the bottom line if you just cancel out the project. But if you want to use fund balance to balance the plan, then that'll fix the number, but it doesn't fix the problem.
Doesn't fit right the long-term problem, right?
But you just said you didn't want to use 2 million in fund balance because the
For ag
budget was
pres,
too
right.
scary. Now we want to use
But
3 times that?
But that's why, though. That was why, because I wanted to see what we had with the fund balance to try to get us through this year. Now, if that doesn't work, if nobody's happy with that, I have a couple of other options we can try. Some of them are mixed. Some of them would be removing some of these projects, for example, removing PFAS in Georgetown. And this is not going to make anybody happy. We just had this discussion about, moving EMS in the right direction. We've held a lot of departments to last year's level of funding, and we're as close as possible. In a lot of cases, we've given partial increases as a way to step us in the right direction. Now, I know, and I'm going to bring down a storm here, but public school funding, we've allocated $6 million for that ongoing from this year on. Now, if we're moving them in the right direction, right? I know they're trying to get ahead of the teacher salaries and the increases. So if we reduced some of that, that would help us get to a point where we could use fund balance, and then we wouldn't have to worry about.
We cannot use fund balance responsibly. And we sit there and let CCPS do negotiations with their bargaining units based on our word. My word is not zero. Maybe your word is, but I'm sorry. You guys sit here and added money today, raise taxes, and let's go home. I mean, this smoke and mirrors is, so now we're going to cut Carroll County Public Schools and make them go back into renegotiation with their bargaining units?
Kenny, I'm looking at every possible option that we have.
They aren't options. They aren't viable options. They were been good things to discuss a month ago.
Well, look, all right,
And I'm probably tired and irritable, Ed, tell
Every-
me I'm old.
Can I interject?
But,
Yes.
gee, Benetti, it's some of this stuff,
All right, so let's, okay, go ahead.
and again, this used to be my expression. My frickin' grandkids know more about a budget than we sit here and deal.
All right,
Oh, my gosh.
so
If one
let's,
of them said, I'm taking my tax return and do the first payment on a car, I'd smack the shit out of them.
Stand up, take a breath.
let's remember that everything Commissioner Vigliotti is suggesting is in the context of that we really don't know where revenue is going to go, and I still don't understand why in the world it would go down when I can tell you right now in the southern part of the county, assessments are up for renewal, and we're going to get hammered down there. And it's also in the context of not having to raise people's property taxes. I think that's pretty important. And
I
all the
think it's
things,
very
and
important.
all the things he's going to mention have been mentioned before in the last 8 weeks.
And I said
Everything
the
he's going
first
to
day
talk
we
about.
had budget, if you don't want to raise taxes, don't add anything to the budget. And we sat here and added, and I'm comfortable with what we added. But to sit here and say we're going to do smoke and mirrors.
I just don't see it that way. I mean, I understand what you mean, but I
and
just,
Ted, the property tax, an increase is in the budget, correct?
Yes.
2 cents.
How much?
For the next assessment, we have 15% built in? 15. Then we do have it dropping off after that, I think, to 5 or 6.
But for this year,
Right, because we believe that South Carroll has not fully caught up to what we've experienced over the last 3 years.
that's what I mentioned.
But we think after South Carroll, we probably are caught up unless something else changes.
So what you just said is what you just said. It's in the budget.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so you said, what's that?
Yes.
Yeah, it's accounted for. What your expectation, which I agree with, is accounted for and is already in the budget.
Yeah, and if we raise property taxes, people get hammered even more. That's what's going to happen. But the money's in
How
there.
much can they go up? Because there's
5%, I
a
guess.
limit. If it goes up 20%, it's phased in.
5% a year because of the homestead
So
tax
that's all
credit.
it can go up.
The-
And I understand, but I'm just,
Going back to these projects, Georgetown Boulevard is in the master plan. It's a safety issue. It's an opportunity for growth and development and more revenue in the southern part of the county, without a doubt. Piney Run Dam has been assessed, I don't know how many years ago, for its,
Piney Run Dam is under an order by
Yeah,
the
by feds.
state to make
By those feds.
repairs.
yeah.
Upgrades, repairs,
Yeah.
whatever, to meet the current standards
Right.
of the whatever year storm.
And it's,
Has to
yeah, it's
be
a
done by
100-year storm. Right.
2027.
And it's, AECom, I think, is the ones who have that, have been working on that for quite some time. PFAS, I understand, but again, it's there, and we've got to deal with it. It's it's kind of like, nobody wants to talk about climate change, nobody wants to talk about PFAS, nobody wants to talk about certain things, but this one is there, and we are going to get significant mandates on what to do with it. So having money put aside, not in operational, but put aside, I think is the responsible thing to do. I don't think any one of these will adjust anything that we have up there. That's why I'm like, I understand the challenge, but these are important projects. Some are the vision of the county, you know, the growth of the county, the vision and master plan, the safety with the Piney Run Dam, you know, and PFAS is safety, so.
And I take those points, and I don't disagree with them. I'm not saying no, I'm saying not now.
And with the schools, the Board of Education, they unanimously voted to approve their budget request coming to us. So when they unanimously do that, just like I had with Chief Robinson, I'm going to listen to what they had to say, and we got it down to 6 million from the 10.8 that they asked for, that they all approved, every 5 of them, and that's important to me. And we got them down to 6, and they said, okay, we can meet all our negotiating and bargaining things that they do, and we're satisfied. If we make any adjustment underneath that, it's going to open up just big can of worms for them and a whole lot of things in front of us, in front of them, so.
This would have all been great discussions 2 months ago. But, like I say, we sit here and add money, and then we say we owe it to the people not to raise taxes. Well, let's stay all night, let's go back through, and I move we take $1.5 million out of EMS. I move we take 169 out of the library. I move we take $1 million out of the schools. What the hell's chaos? Let's cut costs. That's how you balance a budget.
We've been working on it, that's for sure. And if you want to go there, Commissioner Kyler, then I will go there. I did not agree to put $6 million into the budget for the schools. 4 of us voted to propose this budget. You only need 3 to pass it, and so if that's the case, then you have your 3 and you don't need me. So I'll be a no vote on the budget, you have your 3 votes, and we're good to go.
Yeah, I just don't know what else we do.
I'm not sure, what percentage of 543 million is 4.8 million? Can somebody do the math for me? I don't want to mess this up.
No, it's going to be a little less than 1.
A little less than 1%.
It's 0.08%?
0.8.
We can't find
Right,
0.08% to cut out of this budget?
Point 0.8.
0.8? We can't find 0.8 to cut out of this budget?
Like I say,
I mean, that was
let's start.
It was a viable suggestion, and to say that we didn't talk about these things for the past 8 weeks, I mentioned all these
Oh,
things the
I
past 8 weeks.
understand, but we didn't make any decisions. It's unconscionable to make those decisions today. But like I said, we want to cut,
Well,
let's cut. We added $1.5 million. We didn't cut.
So where do
And
we-
that's fine.
So where do we want to cut, with that in mind, $4.8 million out of the operating budget? If that's what you're looking at. And I just don't know where to go.
Well, let me propose something I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. If I could propose something just for a minute. I understand there's a lot of discussion here with all of us. And I'm not trying to drag this out today, why don't we take 5 minutes, come back, and look at this? If that-
Second.
Recess till 4:45?
Yeah,
Kenny?
that's fine.
Commissioner Kyler, we were going to motion to recess for 15 minutes.
Second?
For 15 or 5?
To-
So
for
just
5 minutes.
15's fine, whatever anybody wants, 10 minutes, whatever.
somebody make a time.
So what's the motion?
4:45.
4:45, okay, 4:45, there you go.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Recess.
So we need to find 4.8 million. PFAS is 2 million. I'm going to make the argument.
So
yes.
you're okay with recordation?
I'm okay with recordation. I'm trying to avoid the property tax increase.
You need to find it in the operating budget. Looking for it in a different budget doesn't help.
Well,
It helps us today, and it gives us time to see how other things fall into place, and that was where I was coming at with the assessments, et cetera, the EMS billing revenue.
how much
The
are we?
assessments are in the budget.
Taxes, how much are we totally talking about with our taxes? You said it earlier, recordation and property equals
9 million.
Just shy.
Just shy.
Commissioner
9 million.
Vigliotti, on
Okay.
property tax, even if the assessments come in higher than what we have projected, the homestead tax credit won't increase our revenue beyond what we've already projected.
So,
The assessments could be 50%, and it's not going to help the bottom line in the first 3 years.
okay, so, because, Mike, you said 4.8 we need to find, but that was 4.8 just from property tax, not 9 million with all the tax.
Yes,
So
and
are you satisfied with recordation at this point?
no, I'm glad you asked that. No, I'm not, but I'm willing to work my tail off to find that 4.8.
Well, no, but it wouldn't be 4.8, it'd be 9.
If you,
It's not, the recordation and property
Yeah.
is 9.
Yeah.
So are you saying now our target is 9?
No, it's 4.8 for me,
So if-
personally.
So if it's 4.8, you've got to be then saying you're good with one or the other.
Yeah, I appreciate the efforts to try to remove property taxes, and I will work with anybody here to do that. I'm still opposed to recordation, but that's okay. Doesn't mean I'm not going to work to try to save people some money. So, I mean, fair question.
so you'll,
Probably don't like my answer, but
No, that's okay. It's just, I don't want you to be under false pretenses that 4.8 is all of the tax revenue. It's not, it's half of the tax revenue.
that's correct, yes, I understand. I
Okay.
understand. And I'm glad you asked that, and I was going to make that statement.
Okay, good.
And again, I'd like to see us find 1% of this budget to cut. And I think it's worth mentioning that, I mean, before we even added the additional funding for FADAs, we were still looking at deficits out to FY30. We've still got a spending problem that we're going to have to confront no matter what. And last year, I sat here at this chair and talked about that. I've talked about that for the last 8 weeks. That's not important right now. What's important is that we can find, as Republicans, I'm hoping we can come together and find some way to reduce this budget by 0.8%, turn out the lights and go home.
Ted, I have a quick question for you. You were talking about the assessments earlier, and obviously they go up, what is it, 5% a year for the homestead?
It'd be capped at 5%.
Capped at 5. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I know you're the expert on this far better than I. That is only for personal home property. So anybody that had, say, a second or third property, or if it was commercial, that's not capped at that 5%.
Yes,
correct?
that's true.
I'm not suggesting that's going to make up a massive amount of the revenue needed, but that would at least, there is a differential there.
Yeah, you're right, and what I said to Commissioner Vigliotti was incorrect, although like you say, I don't think it's enough to
Sure.
substantially change the picture. But yeah, if somebody has a second home, or we're talking about commercial property, and things come in above 15%, we would see some increase for
So
that.
if they were to come in and say 23, we would get the additional, what is that?
Yes.
7? Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I mean, from the get-go, there are a few things cut like ag pres. You know, I recommend cutting, there's a handful of others, and I think we all tried. Joe, you had some thoughts about where you want to cut?
all right, so I know it's not a good option, and I know it only gets us through this year. If we removed PFAS, that's $2 million out of the 4, that gets us 2.8 closer to where we need to be to get to the 4.8. So we're down to 2.8 if we take out PFAS. There's a lot we really do not still know about PFAS. We don't know the ppm totals, we don't know what the cleanup effort's going to be involved, and I understand that we are trying to hedge our bets about what's to come in the future. I understand that. But last year we took $9 million to plug our budget to get us through last year. This year, we're down to 4.8. So if we take PFAS out and put that into the 4.8, that leaves us with 2.8 that we have to find to not have to raise property taxes.
Okay, before you continue down that road, I think if that's your plan, there's a quicker way to get there. You don't really need to look at eliminating one-time funding. If in the end, we're going to use one-time funding to make the up 25 balance, then you can just go directly there and say, take 4.8 out of the revenue, and put 4.8 of one-time money on the bottom line. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not suggesting we do that, but I'm just saying mechanically, that will accomplish the same thing you're trying to do.
So if we did that, what would that do to our surplus fund? What number would we
Drop
be
down
at?
to 12 or so.
14, that'd be
13?
Yeah, 14 million.
Okay.
But that's still not getting us rid of all the taxes. If you want to get rid of all the taxes, it would get down to 9 million.
I've said that, like Commissioner Guerin, I can live with the recordation, but if we can save people the property tax, that's the goal.
I apologize,
I'm
don't
sorry.
speak
And
for
I-
well,
Commissioner
no.
Guerin, because.
I thought that was what you
And
said.
I want recognition.
I thought we took a recess to look at the operating budget and eliminate costs. I mean, the first day here, you cut 2.5 or 3 million, I cut 2.8. Since put some of it back, but that's how we make the budget balance. PFAS is irrelevant. Like Ted said, if we want to lie to ourselves, then let's just say, let's fake it and do it.
You mean the whole 4.8?
Whatever. I mean, we sat here and added to the cost. We need to generate revenue to pay for that. And we did. And we've got the budget where it'll balance. I don't know what else we do.
Well, we'll use the 4.8 as our fallback position.
Yeah,
And I understand,
there's zero logic in that.
it,
And I think I said the same thing last year, and like I say, when we look at, if we don't watch it, we're gonna raise taxes twice. And now we're gonna raise them 3 times.
well, if we did take PFAS, I know what Ted is saying about the whole thing about the surplus, but if we did remove PFAS and just use that rather than another 2, the PFAS wouldn't be in there. And again, I know, I get it, this gets us through this year. We scrambled through last year. We thought we were heading in a pretty decent direction this year, and, again, the recordation tax is going to be $650. I don't have an argument with that. If we can try to find a way to avoid the property tax, I know I keep repeating myself, but that's my goal here, is to try to avoid having to raise the property
I've
tax.
got a suggestion. Public safety and corrections, the total's 86 million. Take 5% out of that, the budget balances. If we want to cut the budget, let's cut the budget.
How much would that remove though? You're talking about 4.8, but
Yeah.
then where's it going to come from? I mean, from,
I have no idea. I have no idea. We can take off $1.5 million that we just added.
take off.
You understand the argument about PFAS. It's not about PFAS. It's about your intent of not regarding PFAS, but your intent of one-time funds being taken away and putting it on the bottom line.
Yes.
So it's not a PFAS issue, it's a use of one-time funds.
Yes.
That's what you're, like, it's mechanically working to do.
Ultimately, mechanically,
What
yes.
we've done to date, and again, going back, the funding reduction for fire EMS, the 2.8 million, the 2.5 million taken away for ag pres, the 1.6 million reduction of the reserve for contingency. I mean, these are all significant numbers. Now, the big significant number in increase was the 6 million in school funding,
Right.
but that was almost half of what they requested in the first place. So, again, I don't want to second guess them when they say this is the bare minimum that got them through all the negotiations, you know? And the only way we can do that and everything else is figure out where revenue is going to come from. But it's got to be, to me, ongoing revenue. Now, that's not, I am trying to sway you, but it's an ongoing revenue issue, because if not, all we're going to end up doing is we're building this cliff till it's going to get to a point where it's going to be so steep, we're not going to have the fund balance to mask that cliff. And that's going to be a very dangerous situation where it'll be a significant sticker shock in taxes. And we don't want to go there, because some of the counties and jurisdictions are there. They are doing like 10-cent increases and 5-cent increases, and we don't want to go there. We don't have the industrial base that some counties have, but we're building it with the Georgetown Boulevard, you know, expansion going into that large Beatty property. That's going to be some significant revenue once all done in 10 years or whatever it's going to be. But in my mind, I'm just looking at the ongoing dollars that we need to be focused on.
I understand that.
Okay.
I do not dispute that there's a long-term implication to this. I do not dispute that whatsoever.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
I want to go back to CCPS budget real quick. I know we gave them 6 million, but I also remember that they had their own fund balance that was, I couldn't remember the exact number.
They can't fund any pay raises with fund balance,
Okay,
so it's irrelevant.
well, I mean, but they have other costs other than pay raises, so,
85% of their budget is salary. They don't have other costs.
so that leaves 15%. So, I mean, their budget's pretty big,
So
I-
cut the 15% in half. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's 5 o'clock. I'm supposed to be someplace at 6, and I just can't take any more illogical statements.
but Commissioner,
No, if we take away $1 million, they need to renegotiate all their contracts, period. It's that simple. I did their budget for 4
okay, I
years.
understand. I'm trying to reconcile that with the fact that they do have a pretty sizable fund balance of their own, so why wouldn't there be any room
They're
for?
probably going to use that. I don't know what they voted, but they were
Okay.
going to use that for the $4 million we took.
Or, the 4.8 that we did not fund. It's not we didn't take,
Whatever.
that we did not fund.
Yeah.
And the only reason I bring this up is because, I mean, in our discussions with them, and I agree with the fact that you know their budget way better than anybody sitting here on the board. I mean, they were looking at a sizable increase per pupil next year, so that was going to help out immensely.
Next
So
year,
if we're
hopefully-
trying to nail down some ongoing cost reductions, I guess I'm still not convinced we couldn't take that 6 million down to something else, because they do have a fund balance to pay for a
Their
certain.
fund balance cannot pay for salaries.
Question, and I don't know if
And
maybe,
their fund balance, I apologize, just real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe is to offset the 4.8 million that they asked for that we are not
Sorry.
funding.
It's probably
They-
paying for
they-
part of the HVAC going
Yeah,
in.
well, they asked for, their request was 10.8 million. We ended up giving them 6 million. So that 4.8, they would expect, I would expect, the requirement doesn't go away, so they're going to use their fund balance, they're going to be as innovative as they can to fund part of that. Not being able to all of it, but they're going to fund some of it, so, yeah. I know what you're saying, I don't think that can offset the 6 million, because I think that's the bare minimum
Yeah, and I'm not
for
saying,
us to provide them for the negotiations of the bargaining units.
So is 3 million right now the deficit that we're in for the current year without the 2-cent tax increase?
well, no, that's,
I'm sorry, where are we at?
So the 2-cent tax increase is pulled out, and then for right now, we're
PFAS.
eliminating the funding to PFAS, but keeping that surplus funding in, so that.
Our new bottom
leaves
line
this
is a little over
balance.
3, okay. All right, I'm just going to go for broke here. I'm going to make a motion to remove the 2-cent property tax increase and plug it with $3,046,006 from fund balance.
If I might, before we go there,
Okay.
real quick. I know there was a question raised about funding the school system. Yes, we put in the 6. It was supposed to be 10.8 if memory serves. Trying to find this to make sure I'm being completely factual here. I believe, and I'm trying to pull this up really fast while I'm talking, I believe that they actually did remove the 3 million for the computer upgrades, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just pointing that out.
They're going to be using the 4.8 to offset what that wasn't used, and that, I think where you're going, because they talked about technology,
Correct.
and they were going to use that 4.8 million to fund the technology. They can't use it for people.
Oh, no, and I
That's
understand
what we're
that.
doing
And I
with
think it
them.
might have become 3 or 3 something, because I
Yeah.
think they decided they'd put off some stuff.
They could put off some of it to following years, but the 6 million was the bare minimum for the people that
Oh,
we
no,
can
and
fund.
I'm not
And
arguing
the
that.
4.8 was in addition for that laundry list, and then there was a couple lines that were technology, and that's what that 4.8, they're going to use their fund balance for.
Apparently, it states here in the Carroll County Times that they're not doing that this year, and they're going to push it out to a future year. Let's see. States they're not buying replacement laptops at the elementary level, and that they're going to be pushing that out. Smaller reductions will be made in the school system's budget due to the $4.8 million deficit.
Right.
So,
They're not funding all of it.
oh,
because
no,
they
and
can't
I
afford it.
understand that. But if memory serves, and I don't have the document in front of me, I thought the technology was $3 million.
There was two lines with technology that I
Okay.
remember. One of them, they're pushing back, like you just said. The other, they're using their fund balance to fund. But the 6 million, my understanding, was the people.
No, and I recognize
Um,
that.
And since it is the people, regardless, the fund balance cannot offset that
Correct.
cost for people.
I just got a message, we are using fund balance to fund 4.8 million in technology.
Okay, then the Carroll County Times got it wrong.
What's that?
I said, then the Carroll County Times got it wrong.
Yeah, that's about their batting average. This came from the school system.
That's fine.
so-
I'm not debating it. I'm
Yeah,
just
I mean-
telling you what I just read, that's all. So,
Oh,
I understand.
I
I got
So
you.
like I say, I've been there when 85%.
I get it.
It's probably the same, somewhat true for us, when 85%.
Also, I will repeat my motion to remove PFAS and then to use surplus revenue to balance the budget with $3,046,000, whatever it was. $3,046,006. Yes, I'm sorry.
We can do it
Yeah.
separately.
What's your motion?
Is it
I'm
separate
sorry, it's
motions?
okay. The motion is to remove the property tax at 2 cents, remove PFAS, and use surplus fund revenue to balance the $3,046,606. Recordation stays the same. I mean, the 650.
Do we have to have a second for discussion? I'm not sure how that works. Or this motion just fails?
If there's no second,
have
the
to have a
motion
second.
fails.
Okay, maybe you might want to break, okay, you might want to break those apart, but
Great. Motion to remove PFAS from CIP.
second.
And then to do what you want to do, what goes along with that is
Um,
the fund balance would remain in FY '25.
Yes, keeping the surplus in FY '25.
Yeah, I don't understand why we want to mess with PFAS. Again, like I say, if we just want to do something totally financially irresponsible, just apply fund balance and move on. Why screw up both budgets?
Ted, what is the total fund balance right now, just out of curiosity?
that?
I've lost track. Ted, what's the total fund balance right now?
Heidi, we'll go there.
I thought it was around 20, or a little under.
Not counting if we need to put this
Okay.
in.
We're cutting nose spite the face. PFAS is something that needs to be addressed. We are beginning to have a plan and putting funds and resources towards it. And we will be caught off guard if we don't have the funds available to doing this. It's in, the CIP, it's where it belongs, and we are working with the state, with MDE and others, on how to mitigate it, how to find it, how to capture it, how to remove it, for it to be destroyed. And it's a major step process. And I just believe that we should not be doing this because it is not, I'm looking at the quality of life for Carroll County. And PFAS has shown that it has, been unhealthy for the quality of life of Carroll County. So if we're going to be good stewards, then we should not be doing something like this.
I mean, we do have some money allocated already for PFAS, I think, correct?
3 million.
3 million? We still don't know how the class action lawsuit and everything will turn out either. We don't know.
No, but again, to me, it's not so much taking risks on not knowing something. It's more like really taking gambles because we really don't know.
That's true.
We roll the dice. It could be snake eyes 17 times in a row. It's always a gamble. We just don't know. And class action suit and the projections, who the heck knows? Can't do a trend analysis.
Right.
If you could, Ted be showing it to us, right? You can't.
No,
It's
sir.
income tax.
And Commissioner, I don't disagree with anything you said. For me, I guess the gamble is taking the gamble on behalf of not raising property taxes on citizens this year.
But meanwhile, at some point, that property tax is going to increase into a place where we don't want it, and it's going to be very expensive. And if we wait and make it to that point, it's going to be a very, very difficult time for property owners. And I don't want to see that happen.
The
We
economy,
got
I'm
a
sorry.
lot of emails thanking us for raising property tax. This timing is so foolish. Almost everybody has now assumed we're raising property taxes. I don't understand. So $10 a month, we want to do something fiscally irresponsible.
The economy may improve over the course of the next year. There's a lot that we're gambling on. Why do we have, why do we have surplus revenue if not to use it in a time like this to see if we can tide our citizens over
Because surplus
for
revenue's one
for
time.
one more year? Right.
We're trying to apply it as ongoing money. That's not responsible. All it does is push the can down the road.
So, when we walked in here this afternoon, we were still staring at a $7 million deficit in FY '28, that's July of 2027, and a $21 million deficit in FY '30. And spending is going to be increasing by $80 million in that period. So we were still in a tough spot walking in here. So raising the property taxes wasn't going to solve much of that problem. I'm just convinced that 5 Republicans sitting around a table can come up with 0.8% of a budget to cut. I'm still hopeful.
Like I say, let's cut. I suggest
Okay, well,
5% out of public safety.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Do it.
Well, where are we at?
We're-
with
we're-
this?
That's
My
a
motion
motion.
for, I had my motion for the PFAS and it had a second.
Yeah, there was a second. There was a second, right?
Right,
Okay.
yeah, you were the second, I think.
He was
Yeah.
second.
And to leave the,
forget?
We need another motion to recess, I think.
and then to leave the fund balance in FY '25.
Correct.
So your motion is still PFAS or just fund balance? I get.
Well, right, to remove PFAS and leave that in the fund balance for FY '25.
Just not responsible. Takes away the quality of life
We're doing
for
a
Carroll County.
disservice to every citizen in Carroll County.
We say safety, security, public education, quality of life, all those great words we use. This is actually a tangible.
So if we put PFAS back in then, if we put PFAS back in, the total amount in FY '25 would be negative, would be what, 4.8 without the property tax, or it'd be a little,
Want me to take both of these out?
well, we want I want to see the property tax as zero still. But if you take PFAS out, what does that do to the bottom line?
Take it out.
I'm sorry, put it
meaning
back in.
undo it.
I apologize, yeah.
Yeah.
That's is 5, right?
It just goes down to 3 million because it's one time.
Right.
But it still puts us in a deficit across the board. So if you're going to do that, why not take 5 million one time there and 4 million for '26 and 9 million for '27? And like you said, take risk associated with '28.
Well, even if we're going to do it for '25,
I'm lying.
I would still
I'm
argue
kidding.
against '26 and
Kidding.
'27. We still ought to look at.
I don't agree with what I said. I apologize.
Right.
Sarcasm. What's his name?
Well, I agree with you disagreeing with yourself then.
Yeah, that.
Well, I'll ask, I know Commissioner Rossi and Commissioner Kyler are not comfortable with this approach to use fund balance to try to balance the budget this year.
Absolutely not.
Can I ask Commissioners Guerin and Commissioner Gordon how they feel about using fund balance to get us through this year? I know it's not,
Yeah.
it's a gamble, it's a gamble.
It's not a gamble. It's irresponsible.
It's reckless.
It's, I cannot believe we said we wanted to start budget early. We talked about cuts, and here we are, an hour past the last day, and why didn't we just do something irresponsible in the beginning and save ourselves a lot of time?
Well, I'll tell you, I can explain that completely. When we,
Let's add back Ag Pres, let's add back another $1 million to the schools. Let's do 10 billion of fund balance. Why not be totally irresponsible?
Commissioner Kyler, when we began this process, when we started going through it, we thought we were looking at a negative $7 million deficit. That ended up being over 12.
Yep.
We were not anticipating that,
Oh,
right? And so if you, I mean, that's why, you know, we were thinking, okay, well, maybe we could absorb it, maybe we could find a way forward with maybe just the recordation tax. And between the cuts that Commissioner Rossi has referenced and that you've referenced, and yes, some things have been added into the budget, yes, I get it.
I anticipated it. I mean, we have two major, we got the schools issue, we got fire EMS. I mean, yeah, I expected this to be a really, really ugly situation, and it proved itself.
Oh,
And that's
I'm not-
why the cuts, I apologize, but that's why some of the cuts I'm making, years ago, maybe I should have looked at making those cuts in Ag Pres and having that foresight. I didn't. But no, I saw the writing on the wall, and I'm saying, okay, what else can we cut that we have flexibility? I mean, we got, Not in Carroll program. We just went to a vigil that proved that Not in Carroll really shows its value. We have veterans program, we have transportation, we have Ag Pres, we have some, things, and we looked at them. And we made determinations not to cut the Not in Carroll or the drug court and stuff like that because of the value it brings to our culture and our community. Taking something like this, PFAS, goes against that. Taking one-time funds and masking the problem that we have goes against that. It gives us a false sense of security that we've been doing for I don't know how many years. And it's like, enough already, let's keep our,
Well,
big boy pants on and say, enough.
And I understand, and you're leaning more my way than the other three. Republicans ought to make this. I haven't had one conservative Republican tell me to avoid taxes by using one-time funds. They've said, cut the budget, cut this, cut that. It just, I can't even believe this.
Well,
And again, we are not meeting early to talk about budget because it's a waste of time.
Commissioner Garin, Gordon, please, I could really use some thoughts about what you feel about
Well,
using the one-time funding.
yeah, I actually think we're having a pretty good discussion about this. It's been cordial. I don't feel bad about taking PFAS out of there for this year. And one of the main reasons is, and this is anecdotal, but every time I open the Wall Street Journal, the EPA and the federal government keeps changing their position on PFAS. They keep coming up with PFAS that has PFAS in it. I don't know where they're going. We've got $3 million in there now. Is that ever going to be enough to do anything the EPA tells you to do? Probably not. So I'm completely comfortable with having that in there. And that, again, that is something that I've mentioned over the past couple of weeks that I was comfortable taking out. If I'm not trying to be too radical here, and I'm not trying to blow things up, but we could look at other things. We are in a pretty dire situation. I think the economy is. We could look at, we had a discussion earlier about all these positions. There were 16 or 17 positions open. We had a discussion about which ones we really needed to have, and the answer was we can eliminate 2 of them. That still leaves a lot of vacant positions. Do we freeze hiring for now? Do we eliminate positions? Do we go back and look at that? We never looked at, again, it's too late to do some of this stuff, but, we've got a lot of government-owned, we've got a lot of county-owned properties in the county that we need to go back and take a look at for next few years to see what we can do. I talked a lot about CIP projects the last 8 weeks. If we don't eliminate some, we should certainly slow the pace or scope of them down, because some of them are extremely expensive. We're going to have to go back to zero-based budgeting next year. We're going to have to look at what FY25 is and figure out what we can add as opposed to what we should take out, because we are going to be in a tough spot. But we were in a tough spot when we walked in here today. I mentioned that earlier.
We eliminated 10 positions from the county books. We did. We eliminated the 8 truck drivers and the collection specialist and engineering surveyor. We also, what did we do? And I'm going to get the words wrong, but we went back to our FY24 budget.
Flat funded,
We flat funded where we could. And wasn't that significant?
everything but public safety.
Yeah, so that was, I thought, pretty significant by doing that,
It was about 700,000.
700,000. So, that's another major chunk that we, I'm not comfortable with eliminating positions, but we made the decisions and we're going to go with it. But that's another cut we made with the flat funding. So we made some serious and significant cuts for the FY25 budget. What I'm asking is, where else operationally can we make cuts? If the answer is nowhere, then what is the plan to balance the budget? And if the answer is one-time funds and not raise taxes, then that's going to be an answer. Or if the answer is maintain the taxes and line it up, that's the other answer. It comes down to that. It's one or two,
That's true.
So where do we want to go with it? That's kind of,
I understand, I appreciate your comments. Of course, everyone here knows I don't feel like we went deep enough. We didn't make enough reductions, but that's probably where we are right now. Again, I just want to reiterate that when we walked in here, the budget really wasn't balanced. It was balanced for this year and I think next year, but we still have some real challenges ahead. A mix between cutting spending, reducing spending, and finding a way to increase revenue is clearly the way to go. But I'm not aware of any small, medium, or large government in history that's that's balances budget on taxes alone. That's just not going to work. So regardless of what we decide here today, we're going to be sitting right here
no,
having the
I
same conversation
agree
next
with you.
year.
It's not on taxes alone. That's what, but that's why we made all these cuts and changes since March 28th, or whatever date it was, to today. I wasn't, and again, maybe I was wrong, I wasn't expecting the 1.5 million that took us a turn. We did have 25, 26, and 27 close, and having 3 years balanced is pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty good look for us to then work on the 4th, 5th, and 6th year as we move forward. But having 3 years balanced where we don't have to mask it and make believe that they're balanced through one-time funds, I think is a strong financial situation. And if it has to take revenue to get us there, then it has to take revenue to get us there.
And I think, and again, I voted for it. We sat here and talked EMS, and we added a good $1.5 million, because we got the 320, we added about $2 million after we cut the 2.8. And I agree, we needed to do that. I also agree, there's $30 million in the budget that didn't exist 3 years ago. And if we're only asking taxpayers to pay for $5 million of that, I think we've done a good job. I think we've done some good cuts to get to here, but to do all that work and plaster it with one-time money, and I don't care if you take the PFAS out and Georgetown out and 10 other things out, that doesn't affect this budget. It's not fiscally responsible.
Well, to Commissioner Vigliotti's question, he'd asked both myself and Commissioner Guerin, might have a slightly different opinion on PFAS than Commissioner Guerin. I hear what you're saying, but it was sort of like today when we were the Board of Health and they had them in front of us talking about lead. And as you remember today, that lead number kept changing and modifying over time. Now, I'm not saying, maybe they're correct, maybe they're not. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not here to debate that anymore. I'm here to debate PFAS. But it's going to be something we're going to have to deal with at some point. It's going to be the boogeyman in the room, whether we like it or not. Whether that's today or next week or 10 years from now, we don't know, but we know it's going to happen. I understand where you're trying to go with the one-time funding. I understand the thought. I also understand the thought of not going there with the one-time funding. I can see that as well. I understand Commissioner Kyler's got somewhere to be at 6. I'm keenly aware what time it is. It's almost 5:30. I feel like we're kind of running through this with a chainsaw, depending on how we look at it right now, because I don't have a complete spreadsheet in front of me, and that's nothing against budget, but I'm trying to look at this big screen and see what I can see. I don't think anybody planned on coming here today and being here at 5:30. Just a thought for consideration, because I don't know how we're going to wrap this up easily and cleanly, no matter what angle we're looking at. And it would take all of us to actually do this, and that's not anything against any of us. Would it be advisable to get a complete printout of what we're looking at on this current screen here of all of it? We potentially still have Thursday. I don't want to go till Thursday. I think we were all hopeful to get out of here today and be done on Tuesday. But if Commissioner Guerin's point is looking at trying to cut things, you're looking at possibly trying to utilize one-time funding. I know there's concern about utilizing one-time funding. Maybe the best middle ground is for us to take another look at this individually and have some individual conversations and come back to this. Because I don't know how we're going to get out of here in 30 minutes. We spent a significant amount of time earlier today, and I can't remember what the topic was now, but if that took well over 45-plus minutes, I don't know how we're going to pull this in 30. I'm just trying to be realistic today for everybody. I'm trying to be understanding of staff's time, and obviously Commissioner Kyler's got something to get to, and I don't want to keep him from it.
So very simply, we had the discussion about PFAS and one-time funding. We take a vote on that. If it doesn't pass, then we'll reconvene. But I'm going to go for broke here, and I'm going to say we use the PFAS and the one-time funding and no 2-cent property tax increase. If I get 3 votes, we're out of here. If I don't get 3 votes, then we reconvene. That simple. For the, we're moving the PFAS.
There's a motion on the
right.
table for PFAS. I think we need to either go through with that or
Call
not.
it or vote for it.
So there is a second
Right.
on PFAS. Did we vote on PFAS?
No, we
Not
did
yet.
not.
Okay, I'm getting a little punchy.
You've not voted, so
Okay.
you're right
So to vote on that, depending on how that goes, it's not what you're suggesting, but it gets us within $3.5 million of getting this budget balanced, I guess. Well,
So you're saying cut that from PFAS and apply it to the
Bottom
operating
line.
budget?
Right.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No?
No.
All right, I'm going to make one last motion then. And my final motion is to, can I see the total balance? It's 5 point something. I will make a motion to use one-time revenue to balance the FY '25 budget to $5,046,000.06.
I know exactly where you're trying to go, and I get it. I just feel like we're jumping around trying to look at this whole picture right now, and I'd rather step away, look at the whole picture, and have the complete perspective than trying to just nail this with one-time funding. And that's not anything against what you're proposing, Commissioner Vigliotti. I just think I'd rather walk away from the painting and get to see the whole thing versus trying to just look at pieces of it.
Well, look, I'm going to throw all my cards on the table
No,
here.
it's fine. I'm not being
Oh,
disagreeable.
no,
I'm
no, no,
just-
no. But like I said earlier, 4 of us voted to propose this budget. You only need 3 of us. Commissioner Guerin, or at least I've said, I'm not going to go along with things the way they are now. Commissioner Gordon, if you and Commissioner Kyler and Commissioner Rothstein vote to this, we're out of here.
It's not about being, again, what you're saying, it's not about being out of here. It's about quality, it's about doing it right.
Right.
And we're not going to rush into a decision just to be out of here.
Yeah, we've been through months, and we did not reduce the $4.8 million we're talking about now. It seems to me a big stretch to think we're going to figure out what that is. If that can't happen, and maybe you disagree with me, then there's really only 2 choices. One, you vote for the budget with the tax increases, or you vote for a budget that uses one-time money to balance it.
I'd like to make a motion.
Well, hold on.
What?
Did you make a motion?
I did.
Nobody seconded it.
Oh, sorry.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the budget with 2 cents property tax increase, and our budget office gets rid of the 200,000 at the bottom. And I feel like we sat here and added half that today, and the responsible thing to do is increase the taxes, have the taxpayers pay for it. I'm still worried. I wish we could have done 3 cents, because I'm worried how we're still going to be the next couple of years. And I just think if we do it with one-time money, we're dooming ourselves. So I'd like to make the motion, we accept the budget as it is with a 2-cent property tax.
So where's the
And that-
bottom, that's not the bottom line. Is that the bottom line?
What's that?
I'm just
Bottom line
asking what the
should be
bottom line.
213.
that's with you.
Yeah,
And,
is that the bottom line, 213?
well,
was-
and she gets
213
rid of
was
it.
on the bottom line,
Bottom
so-
line should be 0. And again, I
okay.
know, I think I'm a very fiscal conservative Republican, but I just feel like when you got 30 million in here that you never had before, and you've got 6 more million from education, and we get it down to $10 a month, a tax increase, I think we've done pretty well. Anybody willing to second that?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I think the challenge is, and we all know this, and I know we're all aware of it, so I'm not by any means suggesting we're not, but we're not living in a vacuum, and it doesn't matter if it's recordation, property taxes, 40% increases in groceries, your $20 Big Mac, and the rest of it. And I don't think we're headed into a very good place economically. Obviously, I can sit here and look at the out years. I don't like what I'm seeing there any more than the rest of us do. But personally, and I don't want to push this any farther out, but I'd rather us take another day and take a stab at it. I'd rather look at this for the next 3 days and stare at it. And I know, Mr. Zaleski's not loving that idea, to say the least. I'm not particularly fond of it either, but I think there's still some things we could do. I mean, clearly, we were able to add things today. We should be able to remove some things as well. I don't know how we're going to do it in under 30 minutes.
The 2-cent increase in property tax would equal 4.8 million, and the recordation was how much again?
4.2.
About 4.2.
I'm sorry, 4.2?
4.2.
If we wouldn't have changed stuff today, I wanted to advocate to slightly reduce recordation, but again, last year, I sold properties. No one questioned recordation prior to settlement, and no one questioned it at settlement. And I understand the real estate people, but it's, you only pay it if you buy or sell a house, and it's one little blip on probably your property taxes is a plus or minus bigger than it on your settlement sheet. So, yeah, and like I say, I'm willing to take the fall. I made the motion, and I've got some people upset, and some people, I think the majority of the county understands it. And I think, and I got a comment the other day that I think I shared with one or two of you, and I won't say, but thanked me for a couple of things, and then said, I'm so disappointed that you're going to raise taxes, but I know you guys are as disappointed as I am, and so it must be the last option. So I think that's the majority of Carroll County. I know if I'm a realtor, if I'm a Carroll County resident, I want the schools thriving. I want EMS, that ambulance showing up. I want Sheriff DeWeese keeping us the safest county in the state. I want the quality of life. I want the library. I'd like it open on Sunday, but I want the library. You know, it's just, I just feel like we have beat this up pretty hard. And I respect what you're saying, but I'm not smart enough to come up with anything in the next day or two. You know, it's I don't know what else we can.
But I do feel like,
beat.
sorry, go ahead. Good.
I was just saying, if we don't get the vote right now, we're going to meet Tuesday morning.
Afternoon, the current
And I'll
schedule
make-
is 1 o'clock.
Well, why can't we meet in the morning?
We can meet whenever you,
I mean, I'd rather meet in the morning and then adopt by the afternoon if possible.
Okay.
But, well, no, that's just my opinion. I mean,
I'm okay with meeting.
whatever is comfortable for everybody. You know, I just,
It sounds like we're going to have to.
no, because
I
we're going to
mean-
be at impasse.
Yeah, I could agree with 11 o'clock perhaps on Tuesday if we think that's enough time, because we've got a 1 o'clock showtime on Tuesday, so we're going to have to figure something out.
No, that would be,
No? What?
I think staff would need more time. I think you'd be adopting, I think you need more time to draft the ordinance.
So
And we would do that on Thursday.
bump that to Thursday then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we would meet on Tuesday, 11 o'clock for work session, adoption on Thursday during session.
Okay. You know, I just wanted to add, I agree with Commissioner Gordon that we probably need to just take a step back. But as we walk away, I would just remind everybody, I mean, Commissioner Bigliotti is, I think he's the one who's willing to compromise here. We're just left to look for 4.8 million. And I just still feel like we can do that somehow. And if maybe we have enough time, we will, maybe we won't. But we're not trying to come up with 10 million.
Right.
Or excuse me,
No, I think
9 million, it's
We
4.8.
beat on this pretty hard. And I think this picture makes next year not easy, but not impossible, and 27's going to be tough.
So a point of order, you can put it in a motion, I seconded it. Are you going to withdraw the motion, or are we going to go through the vote?
I guess
It's up to
can't
you.
hurt to vote, right?
It's up to you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
11 o'clock Tuesday?
Well, I thought we had to get together
So
before that.
what
Oh,
time
I'm
are
sorry,
we-
you're right. 1 o'clock.
What time are we meeting?
I don't know. Whatever.
11 o'clock Tuesday.
Do you want to do
11
11?
o'clock
Does that work?
Tuesday, is that?
11 on Tuesday?
Will that work?
We'll do what we need to do.
I may have somewhere to be at 3 o'clock on Tuesday, but at this point, I guess I probably shouldn't even
Well, no,
bring that up.
That gives you 4, well, it gives you 3.5 hours or
Yeah.
whatever.
I mean, it's a pretty hard 3 o'clock.
Can you go earlier than 11?
I mean, could we do,
I could.
we always going to say we want to do earlier and let it
Like
run till
9?
whatever we need? Yeah, I mean, do we want to do 9?
I can do 9.
You want to do 9?
I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
I can do 6.
So, yeah, really. So 9 o'clock?
9
That
o'clock
work?
Tuesday.
9 o'clock, okay.
9 o'clock on
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?